Okay, we'll get going. It's been moved by Councillor Marsh that the minutes of the regular meeting held December 15 and the special meetings held January 5th, 19th, and 20th as mailed to the mayor and councillors be accepted. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? No? If not, then there's no communications and no presentations. And we'll move on then to our first delegation, and I'll welcome Jeff Stagger, the past president of Waterloo Federation of Agriculture. Welcome, Jeff, and I will remind delegations that they have 5 minutes to make their presentation, and I look forward to hearing and recalling what I learned at the region. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Your Worship, for that warm introduction. And actually, as you brought up that meeting, I want to ask you to, don't everybody listen, but go to this booklet.
Okay.
Page 14. Look for crayons. With that, folks, thanks for that welcome. And we just wanted to extend our congratulations to you, new and returning councillors, for this term of council. And with me tonight, I want to introduce Robbie Fallings. And we're looking forward to just telling a little bit about agriculture quickly, and we just want to reaffirm our long-standing cooperation and discussions with the regional government in the region of Waterloo. So there's 3 parts to my presentation tonight, and the first is, in your minutes, is the short 4-page census of agriculture, just to give everyone a quick view of agriculture, 5 or 6 tables. And secondly, we'll look at this magazine here. And finally, just a short bit I have about something called food literacy. So, first things first. If you'd like to have a look at this document here, this is the Census Bulletin produced by the region of Waterloo, and much thanks for doing that. And if you'd like to look at the first page, please, you'll notice the first table is the total number of farms in the region of Waterloo. And this is broke down by municipality, and in fact, Kitchener-Waterloo is in there. So the total population of farms, number of farms, is 1,398 in the region of Waterloo. If you go over to page 2, you'll see where these farms are in that top graph, figure 1, which has the largest concentration of farms. Next figure down is the size of farms. So our farms in the Waterloo region are clustered at or about that 70 to 129 acre range. This is less than all of Canada, and that's because Western farms tend to be farms in the thousands of acres. Now, for your interest, I picked out a certain part of this. The next paragraph below figure 2 is an interesting statistic for our region. The average age of farm operators is younger in the Waterloo region than across Canada and Ontario. Farm operators across the region on average are 48.4 years old, much younger than Ontario's average of 54.5. This is quite significant. The age of farmers has been increasing over the years. Quite amazing to have that slow down and actually decrease in the region of Waterloo. Does suggest that there are new entrants in the business, which is a good thing. And also on page 2, just that pie chart just shows you that almost three quarters of the land in the region, arable land, is in crops. On page 3, the farm types, and you'll probably see a lot of familiar types in there. We have a lot of livestock farms, but not too many fruit and vegetable farms, and that reflects our climate. Just below that, of interest maybe to people, is the paragraph, and I shall read it. It is about organic farms. The number of farms reporting the sale of certified organic products rose from 35 farms in 2006 to 40 farms in 2011. An additional 44 farms reported that they sold uncertified products, while 7 more farms were actively adopting practices that comply with organic standards. So I think that'd be of interest to our urban partners. And a little bit about the business of farming, maybe from an economic standpoint. Table 3 shows farm receipts and expenses, and in the total region, $472 million worth of gross farm receipts. And that's pretty well covers this document. We really appreciate having that done. When our old MAFRA office closed several years ago, we were delighted that the region took over that purpose, and that's a great little quick view of what's going on in farming. Now, the second part of my presentation is this booklet here. And I'll ask Mayor Bobronovic to be ready for his part of it. And this booklet is really just a delight to present to you. Right off the bat, it's a little bit about agriculture, and you'll see right on the front page, wondering about hormones, GMOs, pesticides, and antibiotics. Well, that certainly does cover a lot of topics common today, and I think you'll find most of those topics addressed in section number 5. But the booklet also has some really interesting little bits and pieces of information, and just for fun, we'll go through some of them. And I'd like to explain a little bit about cow tipping. And on page 9 is a little story about cow tipping. And in fact, you can't really tip a cow. First of all, she doesn't want to. Physically, you have to have 5 people to do it. And probably in the fussing around, she'd probably step on your toes, and that would really hurt. So cow tipping is probably a myth. I hope that's some value to it when you have a trivial pursuit game of some sort. On page 10 is the headline is Cow Igloos and Giant Marshmallows. So what are those? Well, cow igloos are actually calf hutches. And this is where young livestock spend the first 2 or 3 months, 3 months of their life, I think. 2 months of their life in that little hutch. And they have fresh air, and they have a great environment. So that's what a cow igloo is. And giant marshmallows, those are typically storage structures for crops, and they can be individually wrapped 1,000-pound bales or a long tube full of feed. So I'll have a question for council, and that would be, how many crayons per acre are there in a field of soybeans?
Yeah. Yes.
You are right.
Councillor Galloway-Sealock's done her homework. Mr. Stagger, I can ask you to start summarizing. I've already given you a little extra time, but as interesting this is, if you can start wrapping it up, please.
Yeah. And so that's how much soybeans, how much vegetable oil there is in a field of soybeans. And so that's the gist of this book. Please take it home and enjoy that book. And the last thing I want to talk about is something called food literacy. And the highlight of that is a program called 6x16. And we would like to see all Ontario residents by age of 16 be able to prepare 6 nutritious meals. We think this is a wonderful, solves 2 problems at once. First of all, healthy Ontarians, less demand on the health system. They eat right, they know what to do. And second of all, from the agriculture perspective, we know we have educated consumers who can look through the headlines and make their own decisions on what's good food and what's not to be held prey or hostage by yet another sensationalist headline. So with that, thank you very much, and congratulations on your election to council, and we look forward to continued cooperation with you and council in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Stagger. We have a few questions for you. So first, Councillor Singh. Inadvertently turned on. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, thank you. I read your bulletin this afternoon, and I found it very interesting. We seem to forget here in Waterloo County, we hear so much about the manufacturing industry and the technology industry. It was interesting to be reminded that agriculture does still play an important role in our community. So thank you very much. I just had a couple of questions. The first question was, I think it was in North Dumfries, we gained more farmers, or more farms. How does that happen?
Yeah, in fact, it looks like our acreage has gone up as well. Well, it's a little thing called the headquarters rule. So I farm in North Dumfries, but if I rented, 1,000 acres in Oxford, it would look like my acreage went up. So it depends where the headquarters rule is that's what you get, those inconsistencies like that.
Okay, I understand that.
But thank you for your question, Councillor Grazula.
Yeah, the other question, I was just curious about the hog and pig farming. That has changed drastically. What is the cause of that? Is that a temporary thing, or is that something that will come back? Is it tied into the departure of Schneider's, or?
In a nutshell, it would be what's called the hog cycle, and there's a beef cycle as well, which represents When the farmer gets market signal and says expand, he does, and then the market gets full, and then he has to contract, and it's that slop in that system of expansion and contraction. And the biological principle is how fast can you reproduce that animal? So for hogs, it can be 2.5 months, I guess, per hog. But for beef cattle, it's 2 years.
So it's something that they can get back into then?
Yeah, but
fairly quickly.
They can, but it's a terrible whipsaw. Yeah. You get tossed with high prices and no inventory, and then you build your inventory, and then the price drops. So it's pretty miserable. But there's other minor issues in the hog things having to do with an outbreak of a viral disease in the States, a little bit in Ontario, which reduced the herd. It killed the young pigs at about 2 weeks. So there's all kinds of, but thank you for the question, and we certainly do like to, if any of those kind of questions come about you, yes, that'd be great.
And thank you for the answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for the information. And I am sad to see that our numbers are reducing within the Kitchener-Waterloo region, because I think that means that we're being swallowed up by a lot of land developers as opposed to keeping our farms viable for farmers and generations to come. What and of course we're hearing a lot in the news about GMOs, and how is that influencing the farmers in our region right now?
Well, remarkably, it's actually a great thing, because consumers they're lucky to have a choice, and in fact they can get a non-GMO product. We do have organic farmers in our membership. And so that they have that option there now. So we're kind of colorblind to whether you're commercial or whatever you're doing, as long as you can make a living. What's the sustainability for us is, can I make a living? Can I raise my family? Can I do those things that most people do?
And is that continues to be viable in the region, or is it harder, a bigger struggle for our farmers within this?
Well, it's a limited market. Studies have suggested that there are only 20% of consumers have the presence of mind or the financial means to buy a brand, which would include organic or local. So there's not. I think we're at about 15% now in Ontario. So there's a little niche left. You could probably, a few more farmers like that. Mm-hmm. But long term, it's you can't tell people what to eat. They will buy on convenience and price, and what they term as value. There's
a lot of conversation around council about neighborhood markets and community gardens and things like that. What is the Farmers Association? What's their opinion on that? I mean, most of your farmers, and correct me if I'm wrong, are large fields, large suppliers. But do they see that interest in eating local, growing local, going to farmers markets positive? It will increase not only the interest in farming, but the interest in growing and eating food that our farmers are growing?
Yes, in fact, I think a lot of farmers do have two parts of their operation. There's lots of commercial farms that also maybe sell something, sweet corn or pork or something like that. So all farmers are on the same boat here. Now we can discuss the great lengths about the pros and cons of each system, and all we can do is wait for market signals, what the consumer wants.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for helping feed our cities.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. On a similar line in terms of urban development,
yes.
I've noticed that the stats for the last 10 years have gone down for Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge in terms of number of farms and the acreages. And based on city growth with subdivisions and housing, it'll probably be reduced even more. But for the township areas, it seems to be holding stable.
Yes.
Are you happy with the policies that are around by our municipalities and the region specifically to maintain a strong farming existence here? Do you think that's going to continue on, or do you have any concerns?
Well, I think the municipalities are doing a great job of using the tools that they have at their disposal, which is land zoning and so on, to keep farmers in the area. And certainly the latest ones, including protected countryside and the countryside line, the rationale is excellent. It is to define one way or other, and then the farmer can know that he could probably establish an operation for his 20 years or 40 years of his career and not know that he won't be swallowed up and have to restart again. So the short answer is yes. The municipal policies so far, from planning perspective, are helpful. But there's so many other things that have to happen to make it work. Right off the bat, that land is so expensive just outside that urban last subdivision. I don't know how a person would even start there. It's like there's this like blast zone outside. I hate to call it, but there's this area about a mile past city limits for this. It's not. There's no farms. No, the farms you imagine to be, mom and dad family, 100 acres, a bunch of cows. Those farms are long gone from the urban perimeter.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And also, thank you very much for supplying the food for our municipalities here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for those comments.
Thanks a lot, Jeff, for coming in this evening. Really appreciate the work that you and the organization do. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll now move on to item number 6B, and Councillor Marsh has informed me that Mr. Beckner's been in touch with her and wasn't able to be in this evening, so he may raise it. He's registered as a delegation for our budget consultation then. So we'll now move on to item C, which is the food truck bylaw, and Mr. Chapman, I think you wanted to just give us a brief update before we hear from the delegations.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. For the benefit of the delegations that are here tonight that may not have been at committee last week, I thought I would provide an update on the discussions at committee. I'd remind Council that our current food truck bylaw expires on February the 28th. So in order to continue licensing food trucks, a new bylaw will need to be brought forward at the next Council meeting, which is February the 9th. As was noted in the staff report, we completed a review of food trucks last year.
Sir, if I can just ask you to not speak out. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Chapman.
And there are 3 recommended changes before Council this evening. They're listed on the screen in the top section of the handout, and they were distributed around the horseshoe. The first recommended change is to expand the opportunity for lunch hour programming to more than just Mondays in Carl's Air Square. Anticipating the delegations may be speaking to that issue tonight, I would note that it's a wording change only. Committee has directed staff to go back and discuss with downtown businesses the nature and extent of programming changes and report back by May. So while the bylaw would be updated to allow it, no changes would happen until that consultation has been completed. The second is to delete a reference to Thursday night events in the downtown, and this is based on lack of demand. The third change would be to reduce the distance separation between food trucks and other places of refreshment from 20 meters to 10 meters. And again, this does not apply in the downtown. The downtown is exempt from this provision. I would note for the benefit of the delegations that there are no other substantial changes proposed at this time to the bylaw that was in place in 2014 within the downtown boundary, which means that for now food trucks will only be permitted as part of special or promotional events. Council has directed staff to work with the downtown Kitchener BIA and food truck operators to determine whether or not there are appropriate locations in the downtown for food trucks on a more regular basis. And you've also asked us to report back on the implications of more regular food truck programming in Carl's Air Square. Both of those consultations will start after this meeting, and we'll report back by May with the findings of that outreach. I've included on the screen a potential revision that committee may wish to consider based on the results of your discussion last week. The first change, which is noted in Section 18A, would provide the flexibility for more than lunch hour programming on the square. There was some discussion about the potential for day-long programming. And the second change would measure distance separations from buildings to food trucks rather than from property line to property line, as it has been determined that this is feasible from a mapping perspective. And Ms. Harris sent you an email on this last week. So hopefully that provides some helpful context. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Don't appear to be any questions right now, but that clarification is appreciated. So we'll now move on to our, Councillor Marsh, you had a question for staff before
Sorry,
we
yeah,
hear from delegations?
Just one quick question of Mr. Chapman. Did you say that the report is due back in May, or can you clarify the timeline for the report?
Yes, that's correct. Council has asked us to consult with downtown businesses and report back with the findings by May.
Okay. I would just make a note that it would be probably prudent to come back sooner than May, considering the food truck season will have started by then, but just want to mention that.
So you may want to raise that when we get to the motion,
Yeah.
Councillor Marsh. Okay, so we have a number of delegations. The first delegation is Tyson Reiser from Cafe Pyrus. Welcome, Tyson. And if I can just, again, remind everyone that we have 5 minutes for presentations.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor. A lot of the faces here I recognize as customers, so thank you for supporting us. I'm Tyson Reiser. I own Cafe Pyrus downtown. I think we're in one of the unique spots, part of the culture that's building in downtown. We've been there for 4 years. And unfortunately, we weren't invited to the meeting last week for the committee meeting. So I wanted to make sure that some of the restaurant owners were represented at this council meeting before the bylaw comes up, because what I heard through the last meeting, they'll just go through it. You heard from 4 food truck owners in the BIA, and basically within the staff report there was a survey that was to hold the BIA's feelings towards food trucks. Well, there's 750 members of the BIA. That survey had 89 responses, of which 60 were positive, 30 were negative. So it really is not a representation of the whole industry that's downtown. We heard that food trucks drive traffic to downtown. That's what the food truck owners had told you. They drive a lot of foot traffic. However, within the bylaw itself, we're seeing some of the changes to that. One of the things we proposed last year was that they come down and help us build a culture, be here Thursday evenings, come out with music, bring people that live in Frederick Central neighborhood, people that live in Old Berlin Town neighborhood, to come downtown and experience downtown, because as a business owner, it's really important we get foot traffic outside of just a small lunch hour crowd, or a large lunch hour crowd. Which they want to take off the bylaw now because it wasn't fruitful. They weren't able to drive foot traffic to it. They even said within their comments that people make a decision on the fly for where they're going to go for lunch. It's not that they think that they'll go out for a food truck, the food truck happens to be there. So again, not really driving traffic. And that the food trucks don't compete with B&M. Well, I can tell you personally, we lose about 10% on Mondays, which used to be one of our biggest days of the week. We lose about 10% of our sales. I'm fine with that. It's a way to compete. They've got a great situation. However, I think that the playing field needs to be leveled a little bit, and I'll go into that. And lastly, that food trucks are here to add to the culture of downtown. And there is a lot of excitement about food trucks. They're exciting. They do bring people out. They get people talking. And I don't want to say that they don't, because they do. What I'm proposing, though, is that now as a downtown business where we need to have people walking through other parts of downtown, we subsidize food trucks. They get to go to Zara Square, one of the highest traffic spots in downtown Kitchener, without rent. They're provided tables, bathrooms, the things that separate a B&M restaurant from a food truck. Yet downtown Kitchener provides that. On top of that, they provide entertainment to bring more people out, which I'm for. I want to see more people downtown. I have a business down here. I have a cafe down here. I live downtown. And my child goes to school downtown. We want to see a vibrant downtown. And I think one of the things that we really need to do when we're looking at this bylaw is not just listen to food trucks and give them that small lunch hour period, because we need that to survive through the rest of the week, to build the culture at Friday evenings at 7 o'clock when this place rolls up and it's a ghost town. We need to bring people down. Part of that, what I'd like to see is that remove food trucks from the square, have them here 5 days a week, but we're putting in a proposal so that they can operate closer to the businesses. Let's do that. We've got a brand new Speaker's Corner at Frederick and King Street. It goes unutilized during lunch hours. Let's get people to come down to the food trucks. If they do drive traffic, they do drive culture, let's put 2 food trucks there and bring people from Manulife, from City Hall, to walk downtown. Then they'll see the other businesses that are here, the smaller, family-run businesses that are struggling in downtown and are starting to be part of the culture. So when looking at this bylaw, I would love to have food trucks 5 days a week. I'd love to have one right across the street from us, because more people, if they do drive traffic, are going to come to them and see my cafe. Right now, what we're doing is we're just letting them have the center square, and they want to have it as much as possible. That's the concern that I have.
You still have a minute, so there you...
Oh, sorry, I thought that...
No, yes. Sorry,
so basically, again, I'd like to see a proposal to the bylaw that we remove the center square, except for special events. They're going to be down here 1 day a week, 4 days a week as they suggested, or 5 days a week as they suggested. let's utilize them to help build downtown Kitchener, as opposed to just giving them the highest traffic area without rent and subsidizing their bathrooms as well as seating areas. That's my proposal for the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Reiser? Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Tyson. Thanks for coming in. I find it interesting that you're proposing actually more food trucks, and so I just want to make sure I understand that your concept is to take them out of the square, which would force people to walk further to go to the food trucks, ensuring that they walk past the variety of other businesses. Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, again, I don't want to limit competition. Okay, I think we have got a unique product. I stand out among the downtown crowd. I'm fine with that. What I can't do, though, is be in the downtown square every single day at lunch. So I'd love to see them, to be over by Google so people could realize that we've got a pub over there. Okay, we've got another coffee shop that's over there. We've got great recreational facilities behind it in Victoria Park. Okay, or on the other side of that, we've got a brand new theater that's going to come downtown. Getting people out of their offices is so important to trying to get people to go to other areas. So if there were 5 more restaurants downtown, it's not going to bother me. If I had 5 more cafes, it's not going to bother me. 5 more food trucks a day is not going to bother me. However, what we're doing is we're subsidizing everything. And of course, as a food truck owner, I'd love to be downtown 11 to 2, the busiest peak period, where all the traffic is. If they can compete with us and they are going to drive more traffic, let's utilize them as a city as opposed to just make it a convenient food court.
And that's an interesting comment. I think that we by having it in the Zaire Square, we're actually making it a food court. Okay. In your discussions with other restaurant owners and small business cafes and things like that, are you hearing the same comments as what you're making? I mean, it's
No,
hard.
I think I would be unique in saying that let's bring them down further. So we were kind of caught off guard last week. We didn't realize that committee meeting was happening. I heard about it on the radio the next morning and went, oh, okay, well, how did this happen? So I took it personally to go out and talk to a number of restaurant owners in downtown. There's some restaurants that it's not going to bother them at all. Kinkaya Izakaya across the street, they're not a takeout place. They're only a sit-down restaurant. It makes no effect to them whatsoever. Some of the other restaurants lose up to 30%, is what I was told. When there's food trucks downtown, they lose 30%. And they're in one of the highest rent areas in downtown, and they support City Hall. It's really concerning when you hear that. So, of course, there's a reaction that there's going to be an angry reaction against food trucks from them. The most interesting one I heard, though, was from somebody else who doesn't like food trucks, has a retail store in downtown, and she said, if I could get one in front of my store, it's not me, it's not matching my business, but I would at least have 100 people walk by my store at lunch, which I don't have right now. And that's where I went, well, let's use them. Let's let them downtown 5 days a week. Let's let them compete with us. Rain, shine, be here. If they can't be here, great. But let's get them let's utilize them to help our downtown as opposed to just again having them in the center square.
Okay. Thanks very much. You've made some interesting points.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, through you, Mayor Verbanovich. Thanks, Tyson, for coming in and giving us your perspective. The one question that I have is, you were talking about we're subsidizing them by providing entertainment and all that. Mm-hmm. So my question is, do you not feel like that is a fair advantage? Do you think that's unfair advantage, or do you not think it's good for the greater good of downtown to have?
I don't know if it's greater good for downtown. My concern is that we have a number of restaurants. We've lost 4 restaurants in the last 3 months downtown. Okay. Those restaurants have closed. What happens is if we're going to keep building the downtown square where we, for a food truck to compete with us with seating and bathrooms, okay, as well as music, it puts them on a different playing field than a normal food truck. And what we're doing is taking that revenue away from other businesses downtown that are here to support us overall. And that's my concern that way, is that I think we are subsidizing them in that way. So as a food truck owner, I'd love to be there.
Okay, because my concern is I firmly believe that we need to animate our downtown and create vibrancy. And I would hate to see us take a step backwards and not provide that vibrancy with entertainment and all that. But my understanding is, in being downtown, I see that we do spread out the vibrancy. So,
But I would disagree. When we look at what's happening at the market, there's not music at the market. There's monthly music at the market. We've done special trips with the BIA where they've had trolley carts to help people rotate through the downtown. The emphasis that we have from food trucks, and this is a hot issue. I'm going to be on the radio tomorrow because people want to talk about food trucks. They're exciting. But I think we can utilize them to move that programming outside of the square and still combine them with music somewhere else to drive that traffic downtown. But I think what's happening in the center square is people aren't going to the center square because there's food trucks and there's music. The center square happens to be the first place they cross when they come out of City Hall or they come out of Manulife or EA. Some of our biggest employers in downtown, that's the first place that they come across. So if you just decide to go out for lunch that day, that's where they stop. Where if they do drive traffic, I'm fully for supporting more things that will help downtown. Okay, to bring more the residents of downtown, to bring them out into the corridor, but that means them exploring downtown, Speaker's Corner, Victoria Park, Vogelsing Green. These areas that we have that we could utilize, pair them with music, pair them with the same programming that we're doing, but utilize other parts of our or get people to utilize other parts of our downtown so we can make it all vibrant.
okay, thank you.
We have several other people who want to ask you questions. Councillor Marsh.
Hi, thank you for coming in, Tyson, and giving us your perspective. I just wondering, has your perspective changed since you've started thinking about this just in the last few days, or would you say that you've always felt that you would like more food trucks in the downtown? And the reason I'm asking that is just because I'm wondering if you've fully thought that through, is that how you're sure you feel, or yeah?
Yeah, last year I was one of the people that proposed that we had Thursday evening programming. I'm really a supporter of downtown. Okay, we're one of the first places that were open 7 days a week. We're opened up later. Again, we want to bring people to downtown, so I did support that. My first inclination when I heard about that meeting, I was pissed off. It's like, here we are, we're not respecting any of the people that I employ 20 people downtown in that cafe. Okay, I would love to tell you that we're raking it in hand and fist. It's a struggle. It's a tough business to be in. Mm-hmm. So when I heard that, my first part of me was, it got my ear up. And I think we had a conversation where I was like, how did this happen? We went from 1 day a week with programming and things that we're going to consider to have conversations that haven't been followed up on what the restaurant owners were with the food truck owners. To them presenting in front of council, where we're now considering 5 days a week. Not within this bylaw, but we're opening up the door. And from some of the councillors I talked to last week, there was a perspective that really there's no issues with downtown business owners. So, I wanted to get that across. My primary thing is I want to see a vibrant downtown. I own properties downtown. Okay, for me, I make more rent if people are coming to downtown. Yeah. People are in my cafe. That's very good for me. My employees that work in my other company, if I can have them come downtown and not have the idea that downtown is derelict, is dangerous, the things we've been fighting for many years have changed, but the perspective is there. I think when I sat through it and really went through how can we make this better for downtown, because I'm not going to get rid of food trucks. They're here, they're exciting, people want to have them, but how can we use them as a city to really add to the vibrancy of downtown?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, you've mentioned several times that you didn't hear about last Monday's committee meeting. Who fell down there? Was it the city that fell down, or was it the BIA?
I can't tell you. From what I understand, I think some people thought the BIA was going to tell us. I think maybe the BIA thought that we were going to be notified from the city as property owners and business owners. I don't know. I heard about it, like I said, on Tuesday morning on the radio.
All right, something we need to look at, I guess, as far as communications are concerned. In your talk, you mentioned that there are about 700 or so BIA members, and only about 10% of them responded to the... And you said that 60% were positive.
I think it was more like 70% were positive.
Okay,
in terms of it's in the staff report. I don't
what
have
does
a copy
positive mean?
Well, within that 10, within statistics, you can't draw any conclusions from the sample that was there. So the sample that we have was with, I think it's 89 people responded Out of those, I believe 78% were, 72% were in favor, if somebody could check those numbers for me. And so I guess that would leave 28% were opposed. But it's in the staff report, and again, that was kind of the overwhelming, I think it was even summed up that there was an overwhelming support of the BIA for food trucks in the current bylaw system that we have.
But you're indicating that perhaps that's not really indicative of the
Not
feelings.
within, and unfortunately, I mean, we had 3 days really to organize getting some people out. I hope there's some more that have organized as delegates. But when I went through, I believe it was on Wednesday, and I tried to speak to every restaurant owner downtown that had a quick serve restaurant to get their feelings and get them involved with this, because it's important to all of us. And again, that's maybe 30 restaurants. So it's not an overwhelming perspective of what the whole BIA is at 750 members. But they're probably the ones that are going to be the most affected by it, as well as smaller businesses, that are smaller retail that we could, I'm really upset every time that I walk down to King and Francis to go to the bank and I see more boarded up stores. Okay, we're losing Bargains, a very large store in the corner between Frederick and Queen. These areas that the market during the week, there are areas in downtown that need our help, and here's an incredible opportunity to do that. So,
Okay, just one final question. On this question of a level playing field, the fact that the food truck operators do have to have a license, is that not?
So do I.
But so are your licenses the same amounts? I was of the understanding that the license that they paid, had to have equated for the rent, the taxes that brick and mortars.
I'll give you an example. If I were to move my cafe to across the street in a space that is half the space that I'm in now, my rent would increase by 350%. The difference of $300 in a licensing fee, you can make that in one lunch hour. I don't think that we should restrict the licensing fee to $2,000 and make it uncompetitive for them. However, to have access to the highest traffic area where the city pays for water, the city pays for garbage cleanup, the city pays for tables, and security somewhat to be out there, there's a minimal impact to them. Whereas a restaurant owner, if I could have that same respect for my restaurant, I would jump up and down every single day. If you want to take care of those costs for me, Mr. Gazzola, or Councillor Gazzola, if we could work out that deal, I will have food trucks right in front of my store 6 days a week.
No, I appreciate your comments. That's not the way I thought we were getting closer to a level playing field. And if we're not, then it's a different issue.
I think when you consider other cities, so other cities are struggling with this. When I went to do some research and looked at London, looked at Hamilton, looked at Toronto, what you don't have are the cities providing a square with seating and bathrooms. So we're leveling the playing field for them in terms of licensing fees. And again, if we have them as food trucks, and they're food trucks where you have to walk, grab your food, go back to your office, or find somewhere else to sit, that's great. I compete on a completely different level than that. I can have somebody come in, I can give them a different experience, I have Wi-Fi. However, when you have, by their own admissions, they'll only come out in sunny days. They have the largest in Kitchener, and it costs them nothing to come down for lunch hour to the highest traffic area. I don't believe that's fair. I don't believe that's a level playing field for restaurants downtown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Isa, can you tell me, you mentioned that, you're close to Victoria Park. You'd have no objection to food trucks in Victoria Park?
No, it was part of when we had the meeting last year, when we initially started this, we wanted food trucks in Victoria Park. Yeah. Victoria Park has a terrible reputation problem. People don't go to it because they don't feel it's safe. We lost the boathouse for almost 2 years. People were not going down to Victoria Park. Here was an opportunity to put food trucks in Victoria Park, and they refused. They felt that it wasn't worth their time to come down to Victoria Park.
Well, they breeze in and out of there, mostly an ice cream truck, but
there was apparently one ice cream truck. Yeah. But again, like to put the city hall downtown, to put those food trucks in the park and put the same resources that we do for programming and advertising into food trucks to bring people out to the park and experience the park. Get out of your office, go walk around in this amazing park that we have downtown that we've just spent how many millions of dollars refurbishing. Yeah, I would absolutely love them. Again, if they were across the street from me, I'm a vegan restaurant. I'm very, to the far left. If somebody else comes to them and they're going to Hogtails or they're going to West of Seoul, any business, I'm not able to compete with them in terms of the menus. They're not able to compete with me. We have different menus. However, the person you brought because you really like them, maybe they like really good coffee, or maybe they like organic ingredients, maybe they like vegan food. They're going to see my restaurant. I'm still surprised after 4 years, and as popular as we are, I still run into people downtown that don't know about us. So, yeah, I see how that could help me. If they were across the street, again, without the seating and bathrooms and everything that would be there, then the food competition doesn't bother me at all.
Okay, and you mentioned food trucks at Speaker's Corner. Mm-hmm. What do you think the people on the Duke block would say about food trucks that close to them at Speaker's Corner?
Yeah, the Duke block is another thing that's helped downtown. I mean, so here was the city promoting the Duke food block continually through the BIA, and I had no concerns about it whatsoever as a competing restaurant. The reason being, I'd love to be up there. I wish I had the forethought to see that was going to happen 4 years ago, but it brought more people out to downtown and bringing them there. The menus are very competitive. I think I might be a little bit concerned, but again, if somebody doesn't know that you have a grilled cheese sandwich shop or an Indian buffet that's now open 7 days a week, like just an incredible restaurant that's there, somebody will notice that. And my hope is, if the food truck is there 5 days a week, the exact same one across from them, I don't think it would be a concern. Okay. So you'd have to ask them, but as for me, again, if it was across the street from me, I wouldn't have a concern.
Okay. And by the way, I agree completely with what you're saying. I don't want to see the collapse of any more restaurants in the downtown core. I would just advise you to take a look at the minutes from the committee meeting and look at some of the comments in those minutes, if you haven't already done that.
I haven't seen the minutes, so all I was able to get about the committee meeting was the video so I got to see everybody speak to it. If the minutes are up, I will definitely do some research into the minutes. I didn't see that. Are you talking about the comments from the food truck owners?
Yeah, and from councillors and the BIA.
Is there anything specific that you would like to point out?
No, just generally, I don't blame you for being pissed off.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think if you've watched the video, you've essentially seen the minutes, because the minutes are just a small portion of what actually was on the video. Well, one more councillor has questions. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. And I think to what Councillor Etherington is saying, if you see the meeting that took place and hear the conversation, you'll hear the counter argument to what you're saying. And I think it's helpful for this council to hear exactly what you've already said this evening. And I think this is probably the most clear argument that we've heard from the restaurants here. And I think it's helpful coming from someone like yourself, which you've referred to yourself as a quick serve restaurant. And I think that's probably the most impacted with the decision that would be, or potentially that the change that could go forward. So when you're saying this is not necessarily a playing field with food trucks having access to the Carl Square Zaire, I already know the answer to this. How easy is it for you to, move your shop from downtown to, say, take it to Waterloo or Cambridge or any other spot that they may just have more clientele, depending on patterns, depending on activity? It's not as easy as they do.
Well, yeah, but there's an emotional part for that for me. I just want to go back to the first part. I did watch the meeting, and again, I tried to go through those arguments that the food truck owners made, that they drive traffic. but they don't want to come down when they're needed to drive traffic, that they don't compete with B&Ms. Well, they don't unless you give them an outside tiered seating area. I think that there's some truth in what they're saying, and that food trucks really want to add to the culture of downtown, yet we've seen where they don't want to participate in the things that we're trying to build in the culture of downtown. The one thing that I think was the biggest comment that personally pissed me off was when one of the food truck owners, who from the Ontario Food and Restaurant Association says that they average about 40% profit on their sales, typical restaurant offers about 4%. Okay, to say that it's bad business. Okay, I'm one of the, I think, most unique, well-rated. We've got tons of reviews. We're loved. You'll find wonderful things about us, and I'm affected directly by food trucks. They do have an impact to our sales. So when they said it is bad business or that we just don't have a good product, that completely, I think that was the thing that Sarah Marsh kind of heard from me when I called my counselor, and Frank had heard from me when I said, well, what was this? How did this happen? Going back to the first question, sorry, I missed your first question. I forgot about your first question. If you could just quickly say
the second question was the fact that they're mobile. They can quickly go to where the market is.
Yes.
And you don't have that same privilege.
Yeah, emotionally,
you're
I'm
vested
committed
here
to
in the core. You've committed. You've invested.
Yes.
And I just wanted that confirmation that it would be a significant cost to you if you had to uproot and go elsewhere.
If we'd have to remove elsewhere. However, I did look at one part of our business plan last year when our lease was being negotiated. I did look at what it would cost me to move into 2 areas that were within 40 meters of the center square, because I see the volume of traffic there, and it would have a big impact on our business. And like I said, my rent would go up 300%.
And this is where the significant business is. In front of the square or closest to it.
Closest to the square.
And so you're not against food trucks necessarily being in the core. Your primary argument is that it's not fair for them to have exclusive access to the square. So you think it should be more rotated around the core then to direct traffic in other areas?
Yeah, I think that...
So it could be every day, the 5 days a week, but kind of directed into different areas of the downtown core.
Yeah, there's areas of a downtown core that are underserviced, that they could help there, but I think the biggest driving factor that we could do is that if we did that and we had food trucks in other areas, it would allow people to get out, experience other parts of downtown, eliminate this culture of derelict and dangerous that we have, or this perception of derelict and dangerous. And I think, absolutely, we could use that, and that's what I'd like to see our bylaws change into.
I think that's a good suggestion. So quickly before my time runs out, I'll ask you. So, of course, the businesses in the core in the food industry, they were hoping that the BIA would have a little bit more engagement. Did you guys get a lot of communication from staff itself, preliminary to this meeting or prior to the committee meeting that took place before? Was there much of an engagement or?
No, I mean, there's some struggles that are going on with the BIA. We've had some changes in leadership there. And this is one small thing among many things that are going. So I could see how it would be missed.
So as a part of this report that's going to come back, we're not making any decisions today. It's primarily direction given to staff to report back and potential changes that could be. And one of them is report back on the potential of 1 to 2 food trucks in Carl Squares there 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Part of that, do you think it's necessary that we ourselves take initiative in connecting, not relying on the BIA and necessarily being your voice, but or more directly connecting with the businesses to get feedback through a survey or some sort of engagement? That's not part of this report.
I think that there has to be that engagement and has to be directed. I mean, again, I spoke to 30 different individuals who, I told them how important and urgent this was, but I was one person on that. If they were hearing it from city, I think that, that's going to lead some direction there. So I think it's very important.
I'll be taking the opportunity to add that suggestion. I'll have a question of staff later on as well.
Okay. Councillor Schneider?
Yes, you were mentioning that the Carl's Air Square is a great place to come. It's got washrooms, tables, entertainment. Just off the top of my head, this is just a thought, a question for you. How hard would it be for you to, maybe for one day, if you brought your food to Carl's Air Square, if some of our downtown restaurants were able to come to Carl's Air Square and citizens, workers downtown could sample your food and your competitors, our brick and mortar restaurants' food, would that be a hardship for you?
I think, again, it's as a restaurant, I don't just give food. I mean, there is a culture. When you come into our cafe, we're completely different than most places you're going to see downtown. We're kind of the counterculture. If you've noticed that the worker in downtown Kitchener is not the Manulife suit and tie anymore. It's changing to 25 to 30-year-old, fully tattooed kids that have gone to university for computers, have got, like, are part of the creative teams. That culture is changing, and when you come into my cafe, the music that's playing, those things, that's all part of the experience that's there. As a way to get in touch, I think it would be wonderful. We've had some things in the past when we first opened. One of the best things, we had we weren't allowed to sell anything. We had to donate food, but we had an opportunity to be on King Street with all the other restaurants and give samples out, so that I think it was a Downtown Appreciation Day. The logistical issue with that is my menu becomes very, very reduced. You really, again, can't experience my cafe by doing that. So somebody walking by, and maybe you've got that one person in your office who is fully tattooed, and it's kind of the counterculture. If they're walking with everybody else in their office and they notice us, that's the kind of traffic that I need to have, and that's where I see the food truck side going to, like, let's use them as they can, as opposed to getting me to change my business model to be a food truck.
Yeah, I mean, that was my thought. I mean, I know it's a whole experience, but as you're talking, just thought maybe if there's a day or an opportunity for the downtown bricks and mortar restaurants to have their food maybe sampled at Carl's Air Square when there's entertainment, and you can take advantage of that as well.
I think, again, it's something that will help downtown. Anything that gets more people in connection with those restaurants, I think, is really important to do. But logistically, it would be very, very difficult. Now you've got to double staff your restaurant as well as the outside. You also are very limited in kind of cooking structure, the health regulations, the things that you can do. It's just, if you could provide us with a kitchen, I would absolutely be able to come do that. But when we're talking about heating of food, health requirements, it's really, really difficult to be able to do. Even to take it from my restaurant, prepare it, and bring it to here. When you go through the regulations for catering, it's not as simple as being able to just put it in a to-go package. If I give it to you, then that's fine, you can take it. But until I give it to you, there's a different set of standards that I have to have.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And just one quick question that I have, Mr. Reiser. So you're amenable to being part of a dialogue between the food trucks, the downtown businesses, and the city to see what we can come up with over the next few months in terms of some of the kinds of suggestions that you have and some of the suggestions the food trucks have?
Absolutely. I think there's give and take on both sides, and we need to meet in the middle. And, from day one, there's been a big dividing line, and that showed up in that last meeting where they're organized and they have everybody here. We need to do the same thing and get together and figure out how we can both make this work, because they're not going away and we don't want to go away. So we need to figure out a way that we both make downtown better.
For sure. And I guess the only other question is, and I know you've mentioned a few places that have closed down regretfully, but you're also aware that there are others, and I know that's part of the transition, but there's others that are in the process of opening up or have opened up, new restaurants?
I don't believe that we've had any new restaurants opening in the last quarter. We've had some that were from the last, second quarter of last year. I don't believe that we've had anything in the last quarter open or slated to open up in the first quarter of this year.
Okay, because there have been a few, social...
Outside of the boat... yes.
Social and the Boathouse and now the new
Boathouse and the Whopper. The Whopper was a redo, and I don't think that was a closure. That was a full renovation. So. Okay.
Thank you. That's all that we have for you. We have a few more delegations, though. Ben Sepper from Quick Sandwiches. I think he may have left earlier. Jack Bugaiski and Aziz Kanji from Union Burger. I think they left earlier as well. Catherine Bischoff from Go-Go Mart. Welcome, Ms. Bischoff.
Thank you. Dear Mayor, dear members of council, don't want to take up too much time because I think we had a fulsome discussion. But I did want to support the discussion of brick and mortar food businesses. I am co-owner of a little grab-and-go food business called Go-Go Mart. And we opened our business in downtown Kitchener just over a year ago after looking at different locations in Waterloo region and having a growing affinity to what's happening in the downtown core. There is certainly no question that a vibrant and multifaceted downtown is a benefit to Kitchener citizens, workers, and people beyond that. I moved here from Europe after living abroad for 20 years and saw so much potential in what's happening here and was enthralled with the type of programming that's happening. So the transformation of the city core is really welcomed, certainly by myself and my business partner. All the cultural activities, the infrastructure investments that are happening here are really putting this city into a strong position for the future. I've seen a lot of new businesses open actually in and around our operation between King and Francis. Between Francis and Water. And we really feel that there's so much potential, and with the increased residential and retail development and office development, as well as the transportation coming online, this can be a really re-energized city center, and I think we're trying to emulate some of the things we see in other cities. So we very much welcome what's happening here. What we have noticed, however, is that there is a critical mass of foot traffic in downtown Kitchener. And we're seeing, obviously, what was already mentioned, several food businesses closing down. So it is of concern to us, and we still feel that the situation is quite fragile. So as you already know from other speakers, and I'm sure beyond that, independent food businesses operate on quite slim margins, usually owner-operated. We work tirelessly to offer a unique offering. We don't want to, compare ourselves with some fast food chains. We try to bring different offerings and niche products to a diverse clientele that we see here in the downtown core. We are locked into leases, and we have increasing operating costs, of course. We employ staff, we subsidize parking for customers, and we do pay considerably more charges and taxes because of the fact that we have a storefront location. So our personal experience is that we've seen a decrease between 10 and 15% on food truck days. So the argument that food trucks do bring increased traffic is certainly not proven true for us. Just giving an example of Go-Go Mart. We are supportive of downtown events. There's no question we are supportive of food truck days. We were, however, concerned when we first got the notification from Tyson that there was going to be a potential to have increased food truck traffic in Carl's Zaire and Zaire Square. So this is the reason that we decided to make a statement to you at Council. So here we are. Thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you. I have one councillor with a question for you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, just to be very quick, just your opinion in comparison as a brick and mortar operator. Do you think you offer more employment opportunity as well when comparing to a mobile food operation?
At this stage, we're still quite small, so I wouldn't say so. We're certainly not at the developed stage as Cafe Pyrus is or other businesses downtown. But our concept is to grow, and we do offer a lot of business caterings and business lunches, which is a growing aspect of our
So you will have the capacity to grow and offer more employment as well.
And we would like to grow in downtown.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, looks like that's it. Thank you very much, Ms. Bischoff. Councillor Singh, I believe you said you had a question of staff. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So my question was related to the lack of communication that's really taken place with the downtown businesses more directly towards the quick food serve operators. As part of the directions that are put forward in the from committee, is it just self-evident that there will be some sort of engagement, or would staff need a further direction for that?
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mayor Verbanovic, I'll speak to that, and then Mr. Bloom can add to it if he has any further comments. I would like to speak to the process of consultation because I'd want to remind committee or council that this was always intended to be addressed in two phases. Back in December, we provided council with a summary of our approach to engagement, and in the first phase, our intent really was to survey for broad reactions to the 2014 experience. Clearly, it would be impractical to approach every interested business across the city that has an opinion about food trucks, but we knew that the downtown KBIA was certainly an area with a concentrated interest, and so at that point in time we indicated that we thought it would make sense to work through the BIA to pull their membership for their reaction, and they conducted a survey. We also received a suggestion from Councillor Yanecki to include the Belmont BIA, and so on that basis we approached them as well. What we've identified for you in this report is the feedback. I would remind you that none of the recommendations before you materially change what was in place for the downtown in 2014. So our recommendation to you was that based on the feedback, we engage in what you're describing, consultation directly with downtown businesses and the BIA and food truck operators to look at whether or not we can identify alternate locations, program differently in the square, and that's the work that was intended. So to answer your question, yes, that's completely our intention, that before there would be any change, we would approach those businesses directly, work with the BIA and the food truck operators to look at both the square and other locations in the downtown.
And that's where my question still lies, the method of that engagement. And you've already answered back that we're really going through, intermediary, which is the BIA, and the BIA seeking out input from their membership and hearing that back. But we've heard through the delegation that really it's the quick food operators that will probably be the most impacted with any changes or continuation of what we did in 2014. Perhaps Mr. Bloom might be able to give more information on this. Would it be a great undertaking if we reach out to, I think the delegation said there's probably about 30 or so of those type of businesses, if you connected with them directly ourselves as part of this engagement process? So we're hearing it directly, and we can be a little more specific as to what type of feedback we're wanting.
Mr. Bloom?
Through the chair, yes, as part of phase 2, it was always our intention to have 2 conversations, one with the BIA board, which is a cross-representation of all business members, but then to have a meeting with predominantly the restaurant businesses that would be affected by any changes downtown. So that was always planned to happen in the next month or 2.
Could you outline what that process would be?
Through the chair, at this point, we're working through details of hosting some form of meeting that would bring the food truck representatives together with any of the interested restaurants into the same meeting to have a hopefully constructive dialogue.
Okay, leading up to these reports, will council be given an update as to how that conversation evolves? Or will that feedback just be compiled as part of the reports that will come in May?
Through the chair, typically we would provide this feedback as part of a final report with any final recommendations, but if you want greater feedback than that, then we're certainly willing to do that.
Yeah, my only concern is I want to ensure that there's a more wholesome dialogue with those businesses, and we're clearly seeking out their input when we kind of more finalize on some of the changes that we made in 2015 and solidify them, and if further changes. So, but if staff are already part of that work plan, that's great. I guess I'll seek to add more input directly.
Councillor Davey, are you just looking to move the motion as chair? I'll come back to you then. Councillor Edlington?
Just a quick question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Corey or to Mr. Chapman. Why do we need to get into even talking about these recommended changes to the bylaw until the discussions that were just outlined take place? Maybe I'm missing something.
Through the chair, I think that's why when we presented the initial report, the intention was that council was only going to be considering changes that are outside the BIA boundaries, and that any changes within the BIA boundaries would come subsequently in the next few months once we've had a more wholesome dialogue. For example, the change from 20 meters to 10 meters only affects areas outside of the BIA. There is no changes within the BIA from what we've recommended.
But for greater clarity through you, Mr. Mayor, I think nothing will change if you delete the first 2 points in the recommendation and we deal with those in May. I do think you need to set your mind to whether or not you want to adjust the distance separation for the citywide application of the bylaw now. You've requested no further information to inform that decision, so you could still make that decision tonight. It would not impact the downtown at this point in time. And you could choose to apply a different distance separation in the downtown when we come to that point in May.
It is the first 2 that trouble me. Thanks. Doug.
Sorry, say that again, Councillor Edlington. I didn't hear what you said.
The first 2 points here, Section 18A, Section 18B, I don't see any need to go anywhere near those until we have finished and completed discussions with those that are affected by them or could be affected by them in the downtown.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola.
Councillor Etherington has gone exactly where I wanted to go, because to me, I was thinking those 2 items should be deferred until all the discussion takes place. I wouldn't mind seeing the 3rd item go forward, because it really affects the outlying areas more. But the way I'm reading this, if we pass those first two items, we are making some changes, considerable changes in the downtown. And in view of what I'm hearing tonight, that we didn't hear as much about it last week, I think the first two items should be deferred until after all of the meetings have been held with all of the principals.
Okay. Councillor Galloway-Seelock?
Well, I'm just looking at the actual report that we have in our council minutes, and that's what I was believing that we were going to be looking at today, not necessarily some of the changes that are up on the screen. But it's clear under number 4 on that on the finance report that bullet number 4 says report back on the potential operation of 1 to 2 food trucks at Carl's Air Square 5 days per week with financial impacts for programming to be determined by special event staff. So that's what I was looking at, that was part of, because I believe it was me who brought the motion forward to, with a lot of the things that were brought forward from the food truck operators, were to have that to report back, that we weren't going to approve that today, but that was all coming back in the report that I suggested would come back in April or May. And in reading the recommendation again, it says prior to the end of May, but I think the sooner we can get this report back, the better. So I think, and then also the last point of the recommendation there states that staff facilitate a meeting between the BIA, the Kitchener Downtown BIA, the Belmont BIA, and food truck operators prior to 2016. So I feel like we've covered off what everyone's concerned about in the report that has come forward, or in the recommendations that are coming out of finance. And that's what I'll be supporting, because I do think that there needs to be work done and more engagement done, but I think we need to move forward with the changes in the bylaw that aren't materialistic to the overall downtown impact in the short term, but that those broader discussions can happen.
Well, I just want to alert Council of the wording on your yellow sheets with respect to the reports considered by Council says, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chapman, prior to the end of May, should a community consensus be achieved? And so I do recall the discussion, as I recall it last Monday, was that these discussions were supposed to happen in an effort to try to reach a consensus. If a consensus isn't, ideally that happens before May, but if it doesn't happen before May, it might mean actually even that new part might come back even a little after May. Am I correct in my understanding, Mr. Chapman?
You're correct, and I'd remind committee that most of the food truck delegations, if not all of them, were supportive of the original staff recommendations. So this would go beyond what was discussed at committee.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, again, I may be too cautious through you, Mr. Mayor, but I see no need to wave this red flag at the bull and anger people about reporting back on the potential operation of food trucks in the square. Why don't wait until we've talked to people, and then, of course, if there is a consensus, no one has a problem with it, or the majority have no problem with it, then I'd be prepared to back it. But I don't think you do it this way around.
Well, maybe one of the things you might want to consider, Councillor Etherington, is instead of specifically saying Carl's Air Square, you might want to suggest potential operation of 1 or 2 food trucks as an amendment in the downtown, which I think is what we're hearing is what people would like to see some of the dialogue be. Other spots in the downtown versus the square specifically itself. So that may be something you want to consider when Councillor Davey brings the motion forward. So I'll now go to Councillor Davey and ask you to deal with that.
Thank you. So it's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gazzola that item 4 of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee meeting of January 19th be approved. Just going to, for now, for clarity, I'm just going to bring forward the motion as it's written. In the interests of saving some time, I'm not planning on making significant comments, but I would definitely support a deferral of the first 2 items of this. I think it's the cleanest way to do it at this point.
Okay, so the first 2 items being 18A and B. Okay, so you're moving that as part of your motion? No, you're going to let somebody else move the deferral of 18A and B? Okay. Councillor Etherington, did you? Councillor Singh?
Yeah, I think that was a good suggestion that you made, and it seems Councillor Etherington is reluctant to make that change. I think that needs to be necessarily made, that the report be more of a look on the overall downtown as opposed to focus on the Carl's Air Square. So I would make that amendment.
Okay, so I'll take that as an amendment. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Gazzola. Okay. Councillor Marsh.
Oh, no, I also wanted to, so was it the suggestion that we remove reference to Section 18 until after, and also that we just talk about the downtown instead of Carl's Air Square? So both changes to the
So
motion.
nobody has moved deferral of the parts relevant to 18A and B yet?
I move deferral part, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Galloway-Selak. Just hang on a sec. Got to turn someone off. Go ahead.
There would have to be a motion on the floor to actually accept the recommendations that are on the screen, because they aren't in the recommendation that Councillor Davey, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but there's nothing in the recommendations that Councillor Davies brought forward to change anything that staff have put up on the screen. Those are not in there right now. But the amendment makes sense. I would just ask that for clarity we look at, I guess I should wait because it's not my turn on that point, but I'll come back in for the amendment portion. My point of order was that there's no motion on the floor to defer at this
And I
point.
think you may be correct on that part, but I'll ask Mr. Chapman to comment. I'll come back to you, Councillor Marsh, momentarily.
That actually it is referred to, because number 4 states that bylaw 2014-56 be amended as outlined in section 3 of Finance and Corporate Services Department report, and section 3 references these 3 sections. So,
I understand what you're saying, I think, but Councillor Davey, Councillor Davey has said he'd be inclined, but he has not actually deferred that. Mr. Chapman, you want to add something?
Just 2 points of clarification. The first, Councillor Marsh is correct that Section 3 references those 3 points, so they are implied in that first clause. And the other is that the first bullet point, I believe, achieves what the amendment seeks to achieve, and that is that we look at surface parking lots, on-street bays, across the downtown as permanent locations through consultation. So I think that the amendment is covered off in that provision. The only remaining question is whether or not you want us to look at programming in Carl's Air Square or remove that from further consideration. But what Mr. Reeser was suggesting, I would suggest to you, is covered off in that first clause, looking at locating food trucks across the downtown through consultation.
Okay, Councillor Singh, are you comfortable that that's covered off?
It's quite explicit as to where it's referring to. I think Mr. Chapman's looking at a more of overall perspective of it. As long as staff are understanding that intent and they are clear with it, I have no problem.
Okay, so we can remove your amendment? Okay, thank you. Councillor Marsh, then you're wanting to defer the part related to Section 18A and B?
Yes, and just to clarify, when we are removing reference to Carl's Air Square in our motion, that doesn't mean that in the consultations that Carl's Air Square will not be included as an option in the dialogue.
Well, to be clear, the amendment has been now taken off the floor, so we're not removing the reference to Carl's Air Square, because Mr. Chapman has indicated in the first bullet actually covers off what we were looking at.
Okay. Got
Okay.
it. Thanks.
So we'll now deal with the deferral specifically as it relates to sections 18A and B. All those in favor of deferring that item? Yeah, we need a date. So, Mr. Chapman?
It would be coincident with that report, so to May of 2015.
Okay, so it'll be by as late as May. Okay, so all those in favor of the deferral? Opposed? That's carried. Those in favor of the balance of the motion? Oh, yeah, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, thank you, everybody. So that will come back sometime between now and May. Okay, we'll now move on to the tenders. Mr. Gordon, any questions on the tenders? Councillor Gazzola. Yeah, you are now.
Are you going to do these one at a time, or there are quite a few tenders?
Do you have? Is there many questions on them from you?
I have a number of questions.
We can do them one at a time then. So, plumbing services. Any questions on this one?
I had the original question. We have our own plumbers, do we not? This is for over and above our own plumbers.
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
We have 4 plumbers on staff.
And so we would only go to this if it was a dire case.
That's correct.
Yeah. I was just curious if we were able to negotiate. They're talking about a 3.5% increase. Was that issue negotiable? I don't see prices. I don't see the inflation rate going up at that rate. So,
Mr. Gordon.
No, those are the prices that were quoted in the proposal, so they are not a negotiable rate.
Mr. Chapman, you want to add something? Hang on a sec. Go ahead.
I would also note that where we reference the increase, Councillor Gazzola, it's from the previous contract, not the previous year, and so I believe the plumbing contract was let 3 years ago, so this is the increase over that time frame, which is better than inflation.
Yeah, okay, that clarifies that. Thank you.
And the same will be true on the electrical service
Yes,
contract.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the plumbing services? Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
I just want to have a sense of how often we've had to use outside contractors if we have 4 plumbers on staff.
Mr. Gordon, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. These services are used when we have larger projects or when we have times like in the spring where we have a lot of, we have an extremely cold winter and we have problems with plumbing repairs that for staff are not able to keep up with that kind of work, and we require specialized equipment at times, plus the outside service.
Okay, I appreciate that, but do we have a sense of how many times that we've actually had to use our contracting services?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't have a number of occurrences, Councillor.
But if you look at Councillor Fernandez, in the report it says the average annual spend over the past 3 years was $80,000 a year, so...
Yeah, that's significant dollars, and that's why I was concerned about that. Okay.
Councillor Unetsky, is your question about the plumber?
Well, I just got answered, but I have another question another way. Do you one at a time?
Yes. So you do have a question on the plumbing? No. Okay. So we'll move on to the waterworks repair service. Questions, Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I want to know what are we tendering out there? We're hiring people and machinery, and they use our supplies.
Mr. Gross?
Through the mayor, the work is being done by an outside contractor, and it's again over and above the capabilities that we have. Now, it may depend on the time of the break, the availability of the material, so that it could be material from the city, or it could be material supplied by the contractor.
Okay. What I would like to know is, if we do the work ourselves and we use our machinery, both of which get charged out at a rate, how does that compare to what we're contracting out here?
Through the chair, I don't have that information. I can certainly provide that as a follow-up.
Is it lower?
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't know.
Pardon?
I don't have that information. I don't know.
Well, I guess we can move ahead with this because we only use it if we have to use it. So we haven't, but that would be information that I think we should have.
Okay, staff will get back to you. Mr. Gordon, you wanted to add
Yes,
to
there's
that?
one thing that I wanted to explain on this. A lot of this work is done for main breaks, and our staff work as many hours as they possibly can. We had in 2014 96 main breaks in the first 3 months of the year, and staff couldn't begin to keep up with that type of occurrences.
Okay, Councillor Davey, is your question on this? Okay, go ahead.
So to clarify then, is this something that we have contracted out in the past?
Yes, this is something we contract out every year.
Okay. So on that then, and I appreciate the estimated annual spend, but is there any way to compare previous contracts with what we're agreeing to here in terms of prices going up and down?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is really dependent on the severity of the winter that we have and how much we have to use these contractors. We only use them when staff are unable to react to these and get water services restored.
Okay, yeah, I understand the absolute amount will fluctuate based on the number of main breaks, and I guess I'm not looking for an answer now, but going forward on items like this, if we've had contracts in the past, presumably there's some sort of per unit maintenance type cost that we can compare what we're getting in this contract with contracts in the past. So just as a general note in the future, if we can try and provide that sort of information, I'd appreciate it.
Councillor Netsky, is your question on this? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
On page 2, there's two figures, one of 248,000 dealing with the labor cost, and then there's the material cost of 318, which I guess altogether would be 567. And if the contractors that are hired are there just to supplement if we can't handle the load, are they bringing in their own material to do this, or would they not be using the city material and now it's all adding up as additional costs? Is that not correct, or how does that work?
Mr. Gross.
Through the Mayor, the material would be a matter of what's available at the time of the break. If a break happens in the middle of the night, it's possible that we don't have access to our materials. It may be that the contractor can get it quicker from his yard. It's a judgment call at the time that the water main break occurs.
Okay, so I'm assuming that these contractors that are doing these replacement parts are using parts that meet city requirements, as opposed to just getting their own parts.
At every main break, we have a supervisor there, and that supervisor ensures that the city's material lists are maintained.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, move on to the next tender, consultant services, Cherry Street reconstruction. Is that one you have? Is that where your questions for, Councillor Gazzola? Okay, go ahead.
Well, no, my question is that this project, it appears, is 25% off of what we budgeted. When something's so far off like that, is it reasonable to look again or look around, or? I mean,
Mr. Gross, and feel free to leave your microphone on, Mr. Gross.
Okay, thank you. Through the Mayor, the project itself is a small project, and typically there's premiums involved in small projects. We also get more consultants providing expressions of interest than we did on this one, and that may, although there's no indication right now, it may be that the trend is that there's more work out there, and when there's more work, you get less consultants providing expressions of interest on projects that are smaller, more complex, and that is certainly one of the areas that I can see that may have affected this.
But I don't quite understand. I mean, you say it's a small project. We're off by $43,000. We have enough small projects. We'll find ourselves deeply in trouble. I don't know if I have a repair at home that's off by 25%. I have to stop and think about it. Do I go ahead? Do I look elsewhere? Or?
Mr. Chapman? You've probably noted that the same thing happened on the Brightup Street consultant services tender later on.
Next one on is 25% over.
And so...
Yeah. And then there's another one that's 17% short. But
in talking to staff about it, it's my understanding that they apply the same percentage for design and consulting to every engineering project. And so on a smaller construction project, the percentage likely is higher, but they apply an across-the-board percentage. That may be part of the reason. I suspect we'll also find, though, as we get into the LRT construction period, as we saw during the stimulus construction period, that the market will tighten up locally, and we may be starting to see the sign of increased pricing, which may be a reality over the next couple of years. At this point, it's too early to know.
And that's fine. I accept that answer. But then I guess we really need to be looking, is this something that has to be done at this time, or until we get this influx from the LRT over with? I would hope that that's not going to go on forever. So I think it's a caution. I don't know. I find when something, I can live with 5 and 10% overrun. But when you start getting to 25%, we need to start thinking outside the box or something.
Councillor Fernandez on this?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I noticed that the Cherry Street construction, actually my question was, is this part of the capital budget that I see on C-183?
Sorry, through the Mayor, it's the Accelerated Infrastructure Program.
Okay, so is it part of the project that we're budgeting for?
This is the
consultant.
This is the
services.
consultant for the design and the administration work. Yes.
Okay.
And construction would occur in 2016.
Okay. I was also concerned about the same as Councillor Gazzola, because it seems awfully high. So I'm wondering if we should maybe be consolidating some projects and seeing if we can get consulting. The same consultant to do a couple of projects. I'm not really sure how we do that without making it look like we're bonusing, but I think it's important that if we're going to be faced with increased costs because there is so much work out there and consultants are saying, well, I can charge what I want. Is there an opportunity for us to review some projects and push them out a little bit further in order to save that 25% increase?
Through the chair, one of the issues with the Brightup program, if we want to flip over to that one, was once we completed the geotechnical testing, we found some environmental problems. So the environmental problems will add a component to the design. And when we assign budgets, we assign budgets before we know some of those details.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock on that?
Yeah, it's on, again, both, because they seem to have some of the same issues. But my question would be, both of them are being funded, the deficit are both being funded from the Accelerated Infrastructure Replacement Program. And I don't remember, that's close to $80,000 or $90 almost $1,000 that's coming out of that. What's that account sitting at now? I know it's got to be used for like the specific programs. So, but do we know what that account, how much is in that account right now? Because both of them say there's sufficient amount to transfer.
Mr. Chapman?
We carry a target balance of $2 million in that account, and that would show in your unexpended capital balances list. After these transfers, the balance would be $1.8 million.
So we keep on an annual basis $2 million in that account to offset some of work that may be
That's exactly it. Last year, I think we found that we were on the positive side of many of our tenders, so they were generating a surplus, but from time to time, we find that we're in a negative position. This account exists to help us balance those ups and downs.
Right. And this is probably more of a budget question versus a tender question. But if that account went over $2 million, does that get closed out, or does it just accumulate?
It gets closed out.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Pioneer Drive Bridge, Councilor Gazzola, is that a... Okay. Councilor Fernandez, are you Pioneer Drive Bridge? Go ahead.
Yeah. In reviewing some of my notes regarding some work that's happening on Pioneer Drive, and just excuse me while I find that information, I know that transportation has been had meetings with the public about some work that's happening on Pioneer Drive, and there seems to be some confusion about dates. When I approached Mr. Gross about it, I'm wondering if we really should be doing the work all at once. The understanding from Mr. Reedman was that it's work that's going to be happening from Dune Village Road all the way to Homer Watson, with cycling projects installed sooner than later. Resurfacing was going to be happening. They were going to do everything all at once, so they weren't going to be painting anything on the roadway. So I'm not understanding why we would, if that work is going to be going from Dune Village Road to Homer Watson, why would we not try to do all of the work at one time? And I understand Mr. Gross was concerned about a possible conflict, but I'm sure we've done work with two different contractors at the same time in the past. I'm just thinking that this would save frustration on behalf of the residents in Ward 4 who use Pioneer Drive if we work together and combine the projects together.
Mr. Gross?
Through the mayor, the work on the bridge is much different than the work on the road, and it's very intensive. It's in one fixed location. The traffic control for that is very specific, and in our view, the construction of or the reconstruction of some of the pavement on Pioneer Drive, together with the bike lanes and the surface work, may well confuse people when they get to the bridge and they have additional detours to worry about. It's much better to be able to have one contractor in place, have a detour, and then the following year what you have is a road resurfacing of Pioneer from Dune Village Road to Upper Canada Drive. So that's that piece that will get totally ground up and repaved. The piece, excuse me, the piece, however, from Upper Canada to Green Valley is not ready for that yet. In speaking with Justin, he indicated that it would be preferable to do the section from Homer Watson to Green Valley with the pavement improvements for the cycling and that sort of thing, but to defer the work in the other section until we're actually doing the surface reconstruction of a large part. The other part of that is that the bridge itself, that work does need to be addressed sooner than later, simply because the longer you wait with that, the salt, the water will aggravate the situation.
And definitely I understand that if we were looking at 3 or 4 years delay, but we're looking at possibly 2-year delay at the most. And I think that if we're talking about consulting services and work done in 2015, 2016, 1 year I don't think is going to change that. It's also perception. the residents are not going to really distinguish the difference between work being done on Pioneer Drive with resurfacing and bike lanes and painting and work done on the bridge. Yes, they can see it, but the detour will still essentially be the same. The detour coming from Homer Watson, people will have to go all the way around whatever work is being done, and additionally any work. So I'm tempted, to be honest with you, to see if we can defer this tender. And see if we can do a little bit more tightening up and working together with what's happening on all the work that's being done on Pioneer Drive. So I'm going to put a deferral motion on the table for that particular tender at this time.
Until when?
For another year, until we see what's. I mean, I'd like to see what's happening with the transportation department. In addition to the work that's being done with the bridge. I think that there is an opportunity for us to get the work done simultaneously.
Okay, I'll come back to you and deal with that one separately, but I would suspect one of the things we're going to want to hear from staff is what the impact of a year deferral on this would be.
Through the mayor.
Do you want to actually answer that now?
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Gross.
Through the mayor, the work is two different types of work. The work that's being done for the road improvements is not work that a bridge contractor does. They're two separate contractors. They need their own space legally to separate them. They need fencing to separate them from each other. That's legislation. There will be really, in my view, no savings, financial savings to defer it. Things will only get more expensive. And if we defer it, really, the deferral would be for 2 years, simply because we shouldn't be putting road improvements on part of Pioneer Drive when a large section of Pioneer Drive is going to be undergo surface treatment. You do those things go together. The surface treatment and the surface improvements, those go together quite nicely. A bridge, deck, renewal, and upgrade is a totally different animal.
Okay, so I will come back to you, Councillor Fernandez, on that. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, of course I'm not an engineer and I don't understand the whole entire thing. The consultant services, though, however, I would think that maybe the question needs to be asked, are we going to require consultant services to do the resurfacing, the lane painting, and the refuge islands on Pioneer Drive that are proposed to be done?
Mr. Gross?
Through the mayor, the road resurfacing is part of the roadworks program that in-house staff undertakes on an annual basis.
Okay, so we will not be seeing a tender for consulting services for any of the work except for the bridge work on Pioneer Drive.
What you will see is a tender for resurfacing for all of the city, not just one street. In other words, we have a resurfacing program within the city that is X thousand dollars. Pioneer Drive is one piece of that. There are other streets that get resurfacing done as well. So the tender that you will see coming back is for the program for 2015.
Okay, and I've seen that in our budget for 2015, but I just want to make sure that I'm very clear that I'm not going to be seeing any consulting services for any additional work, like pedestrian islands or anything else that's going to be done on Pioneer Drive, because in my opinion, consultants who are working on bridges, on roads, and that kind of thing should also have the same specialty, that they would be able to review the entire project for the whole road. So I'm just more of a comment, I suppose, than a question.
Okay.
Yes, the deferral's still on the table.
Okay. Do you have a seconder? There doesn't appear to be a seconder, so there isn't a motion to defer. Councillor, no, okay. Moving on then to Kiwanis Park. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I have a couple of issues here, questions. The first thing, that a chunk of the money to do this project is coming out of the 2015 capital forecast, which we have not yet passed. May not pass. So is this not premature being here?
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the money that is coming from the 2015 budget is a standard general provision funding that is included in the budget every year. The reality is that in order to get this work done in time for the summer season for the park, this tender needs to happen now. Otherwise, construction would likely have to happen in the middle of the summer, which is the peak use period for the park.
Well, my second question was that this money is coming out of a general revision account. It was always my understanding that those general revision accounts were for smaller items that needed to be done from time to time. Here, all of a sudden, we're looking at a $200,000 item.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, staff have had this new shelter on the radar for several years, and instead of coming to council and asking for new additional dollars, we've timed it out and saved up money over several years. I should also point out that a big reason why we're able to do this work this year, why we have the funding, is because back in 2013, as a part of the budget process, council allocated the remaining funding from the old LEAF program. $600,000 of that was allocated to major parks across the city. Of that $600,000, funding went to Kiwanis Park, and staff have been able to tap into that funding. So when you combine that old LEAF funding with saving up the general provision over several years, staff have been able to make this project work in 2015.
That's fair enough, but when you collect all these little amounts and then all of a sudden they're into a big project, shouldn't council have some say in that, what happens? Maybe we should be putting those monies to water pipes.
So through you, Mr. Chair, City Council did approve a strategic plan for Kiwanis Park a number of years ago. Since that time, the park has undergone a change in ownership where the city has taken it over, and since that time we have been saving up the funding to do this work.
I guess I should have been paying more attention. My final question is, in the funding you talk about $139,000 coming from existing balances. You provided us with those when we were doing the capital forecast, and at the end of November, the existing balance was $109,000. How did that jump from $109,000 to $139,000? Where did that $30,000 come from? You got pots all over the place.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I referenced earlier, when Council disbanded the LEAF program, they allocated funding to major parks. That extra $30,000 was transferred from the old LEAF funding into this contingency fund in order to fund this program.
Did that happen between November the 30th and now?
It likely did.
That old LEAF funding was disbanded several years ago.
It was, and the $600,000 was put into an amount to be divided up amongst all of the major parks. When Kiwanis Park had this need, we went into that funding source and used it to make up the difference for this project.
Are there any other little amounts hanging around?
Councillor Gazzola.
Yes.
Are you looking for an answer to that question?
No,
or?
I'm not looking for an
Okay, well,
answer
then maybe we
because I
can-
know the answer I'm going to get.
Okay, well then maybe we can avoid the rhetorical questions.
Well, I was talking to myself.
Councillor, let's keep those to ourselves. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola asked nearly all of my questions except for two. The first is, do structures of this type require any significant daily maintenance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I would, you use the word significant, I would say no. There'd be general upkeep and that would be it.
Okay. And it does say in the report that they're bookable spaces that generate rental income. Could you give us an idea of what kind of revenue this will generate?
Sure. So from our experience from the two existing shelters at Kiwanis Park, staff anticipate that we would hopefully likely generate about $10,000 a year in revenue, and on a good summer where it's a long hot season, we expect that could go as high as $12,000 to $15,000.
So conceivably, this shelter could pay for itself in like 16, 17 years?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez on this issue? Go ahead.
Okay, I did ask Mr. Gordon about the impact on the Union Mason policy for both of these shelters. My understanding is that we will only be using Masons for the Kiwanis Park. Do we have a sense of if there's an additional cost because we are tied to that policy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you are correct. There will be some masonry work required for the Kiwanis Park shelter. We are required to work with tradespeople that are signatories to the agreement. While we don't have specific information, certainly it's been the region's position that that agreement has contributed to increased costs, and so we may expect the same, but I don't have specific details.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Marsh on this? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so Councillor Davies' question, your answer to his question brought me to another question. Just wondering, will the structure be usable to the people who pay to get into Kiwanis Park for their leisure, or will they have to pay additionally to use this, the shaded structure?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a bookable resource, which means generally you have to book in advance. The great news and the challenge is that we have two similar but a bit smaller shelters at the park, and they are booked all summer long. And so if you don't book it, you often don't get much opportunity. If it's not being used, certainly citizens are encouraged to use it, but it's almost always booked.
Okay. And then my other question is around its proximity to the pool, the actual swimming area. Is it quite close to the edge?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it is, no, it's not. It's, for those of you that know the layout of the park, it is within the fenced area between the beach volleyball courts and the concession stand, so it is well set back.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Yanetsky, is your question on this? Okay, go ahead.
Just to follow up to Councillor Fernandez's question on this, if this Daycon Construction are the ones who have the lowest bid, and in tying in with the requirement for the masonry work with the arrangements that we were compelled to, would Daycon be making those arrangements, or does that somehow go through the city or the region? How do those? Do they that become a sub-trade to their work? How does that work?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the short answer is yes, and that would have been factored into their proposal and the figure before you.
Okay, so and then another question then as a result of, again, Councillor Fernandez's question, then if there's going to be an increased cost, which you don't have a figure in front of you, could you provide that to us sometime in a subsequent week?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I cannot. That increased cost will be already factored into the dollar figure on this page.
Okay.
So it's not, I just want to be clear in case I led council in a different direction. It's not as though we're going to be paying more than what you see on this page.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm just wondering if it wasn't for that, how much would have there been a saving, if at all possible, could be calculated?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would take a whole lot of work and effort to try to figure that out, and I'm not even sure we could pin it down with any precision.
And I knew it would be a challenge, too. Thank you.
Well, just as a follow-up on that, Mr. May, I mean, really, wouldn't it would really be up to Daycon Construction and whatever rate they negotiate with someone in that field, and is in fact that rate any more or less than what a non-unionized contractor would do?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. Any questions on Norwood Park? Councillor Davey.
Just one. It's not clear in here, but I'm assuming largely due to the funding sources that this will not be a rentable facility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it's not. It's a neighborhood park, and so it's for neighborhood uses.
Thank you.
Councillor Yanetsky on this? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that the bids that came in, with the lowest bid being about 62 or 65,000, depending on when failed. But anyways, let's see the 65,000. But the adjusted bid has been reduced by 14,000. As my understanding, that that's all the funds that they were able to raise up to this point in time. And so, is this proper to do this because there's not enough money to do it, and the bidder is now stepping back in terms of what he bidded for? Is that legal or correct?
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the purchasing bylaw provides a number of circumstances under which we may negotiate with the low bidder. In this case, as you pointed out, there's insufficient funds to complete the project as originally designed, so we've negotiated a scope reduction with the low bidder. But our purchasing bylaw contemplates this, yes.
And the bidder's happy with this? I mean, reluctantly he's going to accept it?
They've agreed to it. We've made legitimate changes to the scope, so they've adjusted their pricing based on those changes in the scope.
Okay, it is to our benefit, basically, in the end. Correct?
We can deliver the project within budget, yes, it is.
Okay. Any questions on Bright Up Street? No? And any questions on electrical services? Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, there's a 6% increase from the previous contract, and I heard you responding to the question about the plumbing services had increased 3% over a 3-year period. Is that this? As I mean, the average spend was 292,000. So this is 6% increase on that previous spend. Is that what we're understanding?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is the same percentage. It's over the three-year ago price.
Okay, and is this a similar situation as the plumbers that we have? Do we not have electricians on staff? I guess that would be my first question.
Yes, we do, but we are required to use contractors when plumbing or electrical contractors when with big jobs or when our staff is not able to do the job.
Okay. Would it be possible for staff to give council some kind of an idea offline in an email how often we've had to go to outside services for electrical work as it relates to how many electricians we actually have on staff? Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Singh on this?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand our, purchasing policy. Do we have to do a contract with a firm? Can we not hire someone out as required basis, or is this more competitive?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we get a better price if we do a contract with the electricians over a longer period of time, and they have a reasonable expectations that they're going to get a certain amount of work, and then we get better pricing than if you just call them on a job specific.
Okay.
Just as one follow-up on this, the costs are obviously more than probably several additional electricians. Have we done the cost-benefit analysis as to whether or not it would make sense to bring more people on staff as opposed to continuing to contract out at that significant of an amount? I see two of you want to chime in on that. Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we regularly look at that issue, and we've added or removed from complement depending on whether there's enough work to support permanent full-time staff. I think when Mr. Gross responds, you'll see based on the type of projects that we're doing to use the service, it doesn't make sense. Quite often, they're very large, almost industrial type electrical projects for which we don't have the competency or the capacity. So we'll respond with that information based on Councillor Fernandez's request.
Okay, thank you. So that would be all the questions. Do I have a mover of the purchasing? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis, second by Councillor Fernandez. Okay, I'll deal with Pioneer Bridge separately. So first we'll deal with Pioneer Bridge. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, one opposed, that's carried. And the balance of the tenders, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. We'll now move on to Committee of the Whole, item number 2, the dog designation. We have a delegation that has since arrived, and that's Mr. Ricardo James. Did you want to speak to it, Mr. James? Okay, please come forward, and you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I just have one issue, and that's section I, and that's of my dog, me having to have a dangerous sign on my front door for when someone comes to come visit me. I have to have a sign saying my dog is dangerous. Basically, when someone we have agreement when someone comes to my house, I put him away into his room or into his retainer where he is. So I don't see why the need that I have to have a sign says I have a vicious dog when someone walks by my door. So I have an issue just with that one section.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez, question of the
Yeah,
delegation?
yeah, having sat on that committee, I heard all the statements, and at that time, you agreed to all the conditions. Actually, you came to the committee agreeing to all the conditions. So I'm puzzled as to the rationale for your change.
I must have misread. That's why I said I got the letter and I read it over again. And when I got to that one section, that was the only thing I did not agree with. Everything else, I have no issue with following along with any other things you have. But me putting that sign on my door, that's the only other issue I had.
Okay, but you understand that whether you have an apartment or a townhouse or whatever your residence is, that if your dog is designated as a dangerous dog, you must put up a sign that's part of the designation. So even if you owned a house, you would still have to put that sign up. Okay. I mean, I really would prefer not to refer this back to the Animal Designation Appeal Committee, but I leave it to council to. I mean, my recommendation is that we remain with that sign because that is basically part of the.
I'll get to the motion, but let's finish with if there's any other anybody else have any questions of the delegation? Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, is there a real hardship in putting some form of
No,
a sign?
it's the fact that they say the sign saying dangerous dog. I don't want someone's walking past my apartment and there's kids. My dog is a big dog already. An incident happened, which I'm not happy for. So I don't want when I'm walking through my lobby alone, people walk to the side alone. So now when they see a sign saying dangerous dog, they're gonna be 10 times more scared of my dog. Which I don't want them. I don't want somebody to be scared of my dog because now they're gonna be walking past my house seeing dangerous dog. He's big and now he's dangerous. It's going to be looking very bad for me. That's the only thing I'm not happy with. Like I said, I have no issue when anyone enters my house, I put him into his room or I put him away if they're not happy with him. That was the rules, and I have no issue with following those issues.
But they did find it to be a dangerous dog, did they?
Yes. Well, from what happened, yes.
Okay. Thank you,
Councillor Schneider.
Just a question. If the situation was reversed, and let's say you had children in an apartment building, would you not want to know as you walk past one of your neighbor's homes that there was a dangerous dog?
Oh, yes. All my neighbor knows I have a dog.
But I'm saying if the situation was reversed and you were not a dog owner and there was a fellow resident that had a dangerous dog, you would want to know.
Yes.
Okay.
But I said, like they told me, I spoke with Jennifer earlier today. She said the only reason that they would have to come to my apartment and speak with my landlord and see if that's okay or not. That's the only information she gave me.
And this sign is for your protection as well.
Yes.
We're just, as part of the committee. This is
yes,
to protect you as well. And just, if somebody breaks in, if somebody does something, if somebody comes into your apartment, when your dog,
yes,
you would like to hope that
I'm
they
supposed to have
knock
that
and you
sign.
answer.
But it's the fact that it's saying dangerous. Like I said, I don't mind having this normal sign saying my dog. I have a big dog mouth, but now it's saying dangerous. It's kind of that's what's kind of bugging me. Yeah, but it's not dangerous. It said somebody came to my house and went to his area. The incident happened. I don't know the full story, and I'm not here to. I'm just not happy with that one issue.
But it is part of the designation for you and for anyone else. This is not.
But do I have to have a sign saying dangerous dog? Can I just be aware of a dog?
it would have to say dangerous dog according to the.
So I would have to remove my dog then.
No, it's
So,
not
sir-
ruining your dog at all.
So, sir, what it's saying, right now, the recommendation that the committee's considering is that you would have to put this sign up.
Or I have to remove him.
Sorry? No, you don't have to remove him. You'd have to put the sign up so that people are aware that there's a dangerous dog in your unit. That's what the recommendation from the Dangerous Dog Committee is. And if council ratifies that, then yes, you will have to put that sign up. That's what that's the issue that we're dealing with. We hear your concern that you would prefer not to have the sign, and it'll be up to council to decide if they want to keep you having that sign or not have it.
Okay, so when do I go about finding that out?
Well, we'll make that decision once we're done asking questions. Councillor Schneider, you still have the floor.
I'm finished, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
Okay, so that's all the questions we have, sir. Thank you. If you can take your seat. Okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I want to be extremely clear that I'm going to defer to the members of the Dog Designation Committee on this, but because you know all the details, and I really hope we don't get into them here because it's not appropriate. But I would only ask that whoever moves the motion of the Dog Designation Committee, it is within your purview to say instead of dangerous dog, you can have a beware of dog and consider the implications, the difference of that. I'd prefer to have beware of dog. I think that's appropriate, but I leave it to the members of the committee.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
It's an interesting point because Councillor Davies sat on the Dog Appeal Committee with me for 4 years. And I think it's very important that the information be shared with the public that is passing Mr. James's house. In keeping with what we've been discussing in the past at the Dog Appeal Committee, I believe that I would be willing to waive the dangerous dog signage with a beware of dog signage, in keeping with that all other criteria and conditions are met as set out by the appeal committee as you agreed upon previously. So that would be my motion.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Marsh. Any discussion? Just have one question of staff. I think in the past we've had a standard sign for that. I don't know if we make that sign or if someone else does. Is it possible, is it a big issue to come up with a different sign? Ms. McDonald?
It actually says in the conditions that the sign is provided by the pound keeper. So I assume the Humane Society has pre-formed signs, but I would think beware of dog signs you see in other places, so it's possible they may be able to acquire it somewhere else. And I think we can leave that to the discretion of the pound keeper to see if they could find that's suitable to their needs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
What does our bylaw say? Does it talk about dangerous dogs?
Does the bylaw talk about?
What we're dealing with here, does it not talk about dangerous dogs?
Does the bylaw, Ms. McDonald?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Basically, the condition talks about signage. It doesn't specifically say dangerous. It just says suitable signing, a warning sign or warning signs provided by the pound keeper displayed at the dwelling unit. So I think there is some flexibility on the part of council to modify that if that's council's wish.
Is that it, Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. But
So I think what staff are saying is that if we have a different motion that's saying that the sign can say beware of dog instead of dangerous dog, we can give that direction and it'll get worked out with the pound keeper essentially. Okay, Councillor Fernandez?
I just want to make sure that Mr. James understands that the part of that, the designation is that the sign is clearly visible and cannot be removed. I want to make sure that he understands that if we do make that change, that's not negotiable.
Okay, sir, if you can just have a seat because it's council who's debating this.
Yeah. So I just,
okay. Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure that he understands that completely. If we're going to waive that, change that sign, but that part I will not
no,
allow
that's fine.
change.
I think that's clear on the motion. Councillor Etherington.
Chair, I see a vast difference between dangerous dog and beware of dog. If I've got a kid and I'm looking at a sign saying beware of dog, I mean, I see those signs everywhere. I'm beware of all dogs, but a dangerous dog, that's different. I realize I'm splitting hairs here, but there is a vast difference between the two. So I won't be voting for beware of dog.
Okay. There are no other comments. I'll make my comment. I also won't support the amended motion or the motion that's been presented because I too have a concern about using different wording. I think our bylaw has been created and the wording that's there is really designed to deal both with dangerous dogs, and I think the same applies to, in fact, if there still are any grandfathered pit bulls left. If I remember correctly, it was the same sign for both of those dogs that used to get put up. And I think it does create some confusion between an ordinary sign, as Councillor Etherington has referenced, versus one that makes it clear that there is a particular issue with the dog in question. A recorded vote, sure, has been called. So if I can ask the clerk to turn on the voting. So the question right now is that, as Councillor Fernandez has brought forward, is that the motion would have a sign that just says beware of dog, not dangerous dog. Everything else that's in the recommendation would stay the same. If people don't like that, they can either amend it or they can vote against it, and then we'll take a different motion. If we can... Yes, you can if you want. You want to amend it and use the word dangerous instead of... okay, it's fine. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Yanetsky. Go ahead, Councillor Davey.
I just want to make sure, because the entire thing might be moot. I think we heard from the clerk, and I'll confirm, or legal, that it doesn't stipulate here that it even says dangerous dog on the sign. The fact is we don't even know what the sign says, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out that the sign already says beware of dog on it. So we're really splitting hairs here. Now, if this motion goes forward and it says dangerous, then bylaw might have to go out and buy a new sign because all their signs say beware. The point is we don't know what's actually on the sign at this point. So I think we're really wasting a lot of council's time at this.
Yeah, no, thank you for that clarification, Ms. McDonald. Can you click in, please? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the question is.
So the question is, essentially, do we know what the sign says, and does it in fact say dangerous dog right now, or not?
I can't answer that. I'm sorry, I don't have that information. I can get that information, but I don't have it available tonight.
Okay. So the option would be that if somebody wants to move a deferral, we can deal with a deferral, or the other option would be that somebody simply directs that that the same sign that gets put up for a dangerous dog gets put up in this set of circumstances, whatever it says. Okay. So, Councillor Gazzola, are you do you want it to specifically say dangerous dog, or do you just want the normal sign to be put up?
I sat on the dog committee 85 years ago. Okay. To me, it's been classified as a dangerous dog. I have to agree with what Councillor Etherington says, that you see, and campaigning, we all have to know that, because everywhere we campaigned, there were dogs. In my campaigning, on several occasions, the dogs took a bite out of me. So I have I'm a little bit colored. But you see beware of dog all over. In this case, there's been an incident, something has happened, there's been an appeal, there's been a decision, and it's obviously classified as a dangerous dog. So I'm asking that word be in there.
So, but Councillor Gazzola, the point that Councillor Davey was trying to make was that we don't know if the sign in fact says that or not. Well, so is it not? So maybe what your amendment should be is that we just simply use the normal dangerous dog sign, regardless of what it says. The normal signage.
Okay, I'll go on.
That's your amendment?
I'll go on
Seconded by
with that.
Councillor Yanetsky. No, it's not substantively different than the whole motion. So all those, okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment. The amendment, we're voting only on the amendment right now, and then we'll go to the main motion. So if you support to use the normal dangerous dog signage, support Councillor Gazzola's amendment. If you don't support that, then don't support Councillor Gazzola's amendment. All those in favor? All those opposed? So the amendment carries. So we'll now have a recorded vote on the original motion as amended. And that's carried unanimously. So, sir, the decision of council is that all of the conditions, including the requirement to have the regular dangerous dog sign, are now, you're required to meet all those conditions, including the requirement to have that dangerous dog sign put up on your property. So that was the decision of council. Okay? Thank you. So perhaps I can ask staff to maybe answer any questions that you might have about specifically what that means. Okay? Thank you. We'll now, we're done with all of the delegations. We'll move on to the committee reports. And we will begin with Finance and Corporate Services. Councillor Davey. Oh, sorry. Sorry? Sorry? No, not yet. You're excited. We'll get to you. Don't worry. Councillor Davey.
Thank you through you, Mayor Benish. I have a few here. So the first is that the report of Finance and Corporate Services Committee of January 5th, being the operating budget, be approved, and there are several items. I think we can move them all at the same time, I'm assuming, Mr. Mayor. So and secondly, I would say that it be approved. It's been approved by, or moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gazzola, that the operating budget items of January 12th be approved, and finally that the regular meeting of Finance and Corporate Services of January 19th be approved, minus item number 4, which has already been dealt with.
So yeah, just, well, the motion, the actual recommendation does, so maybe that can be corrected. The second number 1 should refer to capital budget, not operating budget. Yeah. Okay. Did you get that, Mr. Clerk? So you're moving all 3 reports? Okay, Councillor Davey, and seconded by Councillor Gazzola. Great. Councillor Marsh on that?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, then we'll come back to you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I don't have any. Just one item. It's on the information that staff are going to provide to council, and it's on the first page under financial planning, dealing with reserves. I'd ask that complete continuity schedules for reserves be prepared. Now, I did notice today that we did receive a memo from staff that had that information for 2015, but I also wanted it for 2014 so we can compare. And so I just want to make sure that phrase there covers both 2014 and 2015.
Mr. Chapman, do your expectation? Okay, thank you. That's covered. So any further questions? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then Audit Committee, Councillor Davey. Go ahead.
It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gazzola that the two items, I believe, of the Audit Committee be approved.
Okay.
Yes.
Any questions? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Ioannidis, Community Infrastructures Committee.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Verbanovich. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Frank Etherington that the report of the Community Infrastructure Services Committee be adopted. Items through 1, 2.
Okay. Any discussion? Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I wanted to deal with the House of Friendship separately. Because from what I understand, this is still coming back to budget. This isn't the final approval, right? This is we're referring to it and saying it's subject to the final 2015 budget. Yeah,
That's correct.
Because when it was discussed, I did not support it, and I said I'd be in a position to have all the information for budget day.
Yep.
I don't have it as of today, so I won't be supporting it today either.
That's fine.
So I wanted you to deal with it separately.
Okay, that's fine. I'll deal with that item separately. If there aren't any other questions, I'll then deal with the House of Friendship item first. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The balance of the report, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So that would take us through our committee reports. Any unfinished business? There isn't. Any new business? We have a motion from Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Ioannidis, if you can click in, please.
I'm already clicked in.
Oh, you are still. Okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to read the whole motion? Or?
No, perhaps just read the operative phrase at the end.
Therefore, be it resolved?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Therefore, be it resolved that Transportation Services staff undertake a review of similar strategies utilized by other municipalities to improve safety, pedestrian, and traffic movement in school zones. Be it further resolved that staff be directed to engage the Waterloo Region District School Board and the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, the Region of Waterloo, Waterloo Regional Police, and any other relevant stakeholders to develop possible solutions to improve and promote pedestrian safety and reduce neighborhood traffic congestion in school zones. And be it finally resolved that copies of this motion be circulated to Regional Municipality of Waterloo, Waterloo Region Police, and the local area school boards.
Okay, and Councillor Ioannidis, do you have a seconder for that motion?
I have Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Okay. Thank you. Did you want to speak to it now or wait till the end?
I'll wait till the end.
Okay, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Briefly, I have one quick question of staff, and that would just be in and around timing of when we may be able to get some results with respect to this motion. Would it be realistic to think that we can get something back in the May-June timeframe?
Who would like to take a crack at that one? Mr. Gross?
I discussed this with Justin this afternoon, and he indicated that he has a significant workload for his staff, that it may be 5 or 6 months.
Is it something then that we could, because I think we need to really keep this on our radar, is it something that we could at least have a preliminary update given to us in that May to June timeframe of kind of what's transpiring? It may not be that final report, but just an interim report before we can get there, so we have some expectations of when we can see this, the final results from this kind of undertaking?
Through the mayor, what I will do is ask him to develop a process with timelines that will work for the workload that he has, and bring that back.
Okay. And as long as staff understand that, I don't think I need to bring that forward as an amendment, but just to provide that direction moving forward, I can quickly just comment that I think that this is something really important that we need to do moving forward. There's a number of different issues that I think we all face with schools, especially with regards to the volume of traffic and the way that some of them are set up. And I think it's time that we all work together and collaborate and really come up with a solution or different solutions that can work across the board. I think some of our interim steps are kind of holding us over right now, but I think a comprehensive look and working with all of our partners is something that's important because we need to continue to look at the safety of all of our residents, including the students within those school zones. So I'm happy that Councillor Ioannidis has brought this forward and happy to support it moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Etherington?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one question. I mean, I fully support this. I think it's a huge issue of safety and one where one of these days it's going to result in a child being seriously injured or killed. But I just wondered, I've seen this before. Surely this has been done before now. We've been around this several times before, have we not?
This overall review of this, we have not. We have dealt with the individual specific school sites, but not a comprehensive review.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, I'm wondering about what the strategies of other municipalities are. I would have liked to have seen some examples of what exactly that entailed. And also, I'm wondering if we should be adding school bus operators in here as well, because the struggles that the school bus drivers have in trying to safely deposit children at school or pick them up at school is also a huge safety concern for both the drivers of the school bus, the kids getting off the school bus, and children who are walking. So I'm wondering if we need to add that component in as well to this motion.
Okay. Councillor Ioannidis, it's your motion. Are you comfortable with adding school
I don't
bus?
have a problem with adding school buses.
Okay. So I'll just...
Okay. Yeah, I think it's really critical. I mean, I won't speak to this. Do you want comments now on this?
Yes, you might as well make a comment
all
now,
right.
please.
I mean, I have been hearing about this since almost the day after I was elected in my first term, and the animosity and the aggressive behavior between parents and drivers and teachers and students is really appalling. I ask parents to consider not only your children but other people's children when you're bringing your children to school. And I know that some schools have worked valiantly to try the walking school bus, but it requires volunteers. So I'm happy that we're moving in this direction. I would love to have seen and heard some of the strategies of what other municipalities have been doing and other school boards have been doing. And I think that one of the things they need to look at is how we build a school, what we do with the driveways and the parking lots, because not only is it affecting parents bringing kids to school, but it's also affecting the volunteers who often have to park a significant distance when they come to volunteer at schools. And if we want volunteers to keep volunteering out of schools, we need to make sure that they have safe parking as well. So I'm really I hope we can get some information, maybe not necessarily a fulsome report, but at least maybe some first steps and some ideas of what's been happening elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey?
Thank you. I'll just say I'm happy to see this before us. I'm not entirely confident, as Councillor Etherington said, that we're going to ever really resolve all of these problems, but hopefully through this process we might resolve some of them. As Councillor Fernandez has pointed out too, we've all heard situations of safety and confrontations which are really disappointing. I even heard of, I even fielded a complaint once where a resident who lived near a school came home to find someone parked in their driveway waiting for the child to come out of the school. So it's definitely something that needs to be looked at, and I'm too happy to support it.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, just glad to see that this motion is before us. I think I'd be surprised if any one of us didn't have an issue in the ward that they represent with dealing with parking or just issues related to transportation around schools. Aspect of safety has been the primary concern, especially when dealing with young children close to primary schools. And if I think this is a good start of that conversation moving forward in bringing the key stakeholders together to find a resolution. I think we need to be optimistic, and hopefully, a decent proposal can come forward. But that's not going to happen unless we give direction on our end, and there's some leadership that's taken from the City of Kitchener in progressing this conversation forward and bring the school board as well as the police department on board to finding a reasonable solution. So very supportive of what's before us and hopeful of something decent coming out of this as well.
Any other comments? If not, I'll just, Councillor Ioannidis, before I go back to you, I'll just indicate that I too am supportive of this motion. Back when prior to this term, when I was a ward councillor, this was an issue that I heard about regularly as well. I think one of the fundamental challenges that exists for school boards on this issue is that the provincial funding model does not provide for dollars that allows them to come up with solutions that can easily solve this problem. Such as cut in lanes for buses and drop-off zones, and so on. And that's one of the challenges that they're dealing with. So I would expect that one of the things that will probably come out of the work that's being done is the need to do some advocacy with the province around this going forward. But I think this discussion is important. It is a big issue in all of our neighborhoods, and from a traffic and, more importantly, pedestrian, school-age children safety point of view, this needs to be addressed. So, Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, through you, Mayor Verbanovich. I'm pleased to present this motion tonight in that it's an issue that I feel affects the entire city, region, and not just my own ward. It's an issue that I feel we cannot continue to bury our heads in the sand. Granted, some of the issues could be avoided with the use of common sense. Unfortunately, not everyone can demonstrate that, and it has resulted in bylaw and sometimes the police being involved. The cycle of bylaw ticketing and transportation staff posting no parking zones around schools only solves to shift the problem. It's an area of frustration that our residents experience daily. It's our duty, since all of the stakeholders involved represent the same citizens. Let's work together collectively and come up with a solution that is a win for our community. Let's look at the best practices from other municipalities and other school boards to see how they have tackled this issue.
Sure. The motion has been moved and seconded with the addition of the school buses, and a recorded vote has been called. And that is carried unanimously. Just before we move on to the regional update and questions and answers, you have another item in your business? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Davey.
Sure, I just wanted to get it out there. We made some mistakes in the past regarding, I've made mistakes in the past regarding our public input evening. So I just wanted to put it out there in terms of the public and for council, the approach towards our public input night on February 2nd, in consultation with staff and the committee chairs. We are targeting around looking at having around 10, possibly more delegations that evening, and in the effort to balance the respect for the delegates' time versus council's ability to ask clarifying questions. The direction I'm going, I'm hoping we'll get support from committee that evening, is that each member of council be limited to 5 minutes for questions per delegation. And within that, I'm hoping members of committee will use their discretion and really try and hone in on questions of clarification, because that is the opportunity for the members of the public to speak. So if any members of committee or council here have any significant issues with that approach, I would ask that you take that up with me offline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, when we changed the process on the way we treat grants for minor sports organizations that use ice time, we came out with a new process whereby they receive their ice time at a substantial reduction from the normal ice time. And I've asked on several occasions that I would like to see what the impact of that is and was, and what are the results. And I did receive something, as all of council did, on the weekend, but it really didn't. It gave an estimate again, and that's something we had 2 years ago when we set this up. So I would ask again, I would like to see the actual figures as to what has happened with that over the period of time. Because when that was passed, I was somewhat opposed to it because of my 30 years experience with minor hockey. As a result of our change, we were actually making ice available to the minor sports programs at $35 an hour compared to $125 an hour. And when ice is that cheap, there's the tendency to perhaps use more than you really require. So, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I would like to get back a report, a simple report as to what has actually happened. We've now had at least a full year of this in practice. So what has happened? I did, like I said, receive a report as to an estimate, but that estimate can be off by $50,000 very, very easily. And you know how much we argued about $217 last week. You know, $50,000 could be.
Mr. May, can you help us with that?
Sure. So through you, Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Gazzola indicated, it is a relatively new change, and so we usually like to get a couple of years under our belt. But certainly it's not a problem. What I'd suggest is that year-end, 2014 year-end variance report will come to you in March. If it's a straightforward answer, we can include it within that report. If it's a more complex answer, then shortly after that time we could bring a report to Council that identifies the impacts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I got a question that I can either ask as part of the questions and answers, or it relates to the public discussion night for the budget, so I could ask it now. Where would you prefer?
Sure. Why don't you, when we deal with it now, since Councillor Davey just raised the issue, go ahead.
Yeah, the question is, we have a number of issue papers coming on very important subjects, and I wonder when we'll get those issue papers. I realize there's a lot of work involved, but without the issue papers, I don't know how the public can intelligently discuss those questions on the night.
Okay. Mr. Chapman, do you have any thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Urbanovic, we had outlined at the start of the last Budget Committee meeting the proposed timeline and sought Council's concurrence on that. So the proposed date to release the package is on March the 17th. That said, staff makes a brief presentation prior to the public budget input night, and so if there are any issues that you think staff need to be addressing, we could discuss that offline and with the committee chair, but at this point in time, the full package will be made available on the 17th.
I'm sorry.
Or sorry.
You meant February.
February 17th, yes.
You had me worried there. Thank you. I still think that the public will have difficulty on February the 2nd discussing these important items. So I just wanted to make that comment.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, the only other comment I would make is that although we encourage all delegations to come on budget input night, we have not turned them away on final budget day, and so I would suggest that if anything included in the package would materially change the representation of a delegation, we wouldn't refuse them the right to speak on final budget day.
Does that help answer your question, Councillor Etherington? Go ahead.
So it answers the question. It doesn't make me content, but it answers the question. Thank you.
Are there any other new business? Okay, just before we move on, staff have asked for a question of clarification with respect to council's intent on the one part of the food truck issue, and that's specifically the issue that Mr. Chapman raised of the distance separation and using door-to-door versus property line to property line. And he just wants to confirm that it was door-to-door that we ratified, as he indicated in his comments. Is that what everybody's understanding was? Go ahead, Councillor Davey.
Sorry, I'm kind of look to staff. My understanding was from the building, not door to door, because it was building the building, because staff can do that without significant extra costs, whereas door to door was. So I'd get clarification from staff.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, that's the more precise description of it. Essentially, it's our understanding that the bottom section 20 is what was approved, not the original section 20, which is in the first half of the document. But we just wanted to ensure that that was council's understanding.
That was my, that was my mood, right? That was my intention.
Okay. So everyone's clear on that? Okay, great. Thank you. So just in terms of regional council update, I think the most important thing that I'll touch on for council's benefit is that regional council has begun deliberating the 2015 regional budget. At this point, after the preliminary report from staff, the tax-supported budget is sitting at 1.77%. That is without the police budget increase, which will come back to regional council at our next budget meeting at the region. They separate those two items out, so that's where that's sitting at. The only other point that I will make is that I did raise committee's concerns around the pass-through water and sewage, the wholesale rates from the region, and have asked regional staff to report back on what a 0.5, a 1, and a 2% decrease to those rates in 2015 might mean to the region's capital budget. And when I have that information, I will share it with members of council. So with that, we'll move on to questions and answers. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. I had discussions with Mr. Div Taggi back a couple of weeks ago in regard to a concern I had, and this is with respect to the sidewalk issue policy pertaining to reconstruction of streets. And in discussion with him, we acknowledge that there is an issue here in terms of the current policy that's before us right now, and a number of delegations that have come forward back last year on the reconstruction issues. So as a result of this, he's indicated to me that it would be best that I put this forward through the questions and answer process and ask that staff take a look at it again and decide as to whether it should be further reviewed and brought forth for further consideration with staff. Maybe Mr. Gross has comments on that.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Gross to respond to that. Go ahead, Mr. Gross.
Through the mayor, I had a discussion with Justin on this afternoon. There are 7 current municipal policies that currently support the installation of sidewalk. So there is not just one, there are 7 policies that speak to the installation of sidewalk. The policies apply to new development, the infill program, as well as the reconstruction program. In April of 2015, Transportation Services is going to table a report that focuses on infill and reconstruction, as well as a priority ranking for the streets that are impacted. Now, the position at this time of the Transportation Planning Division is that the policies will continue to be enforced unless council directs staff to revisit them. But there are 7 policies that speak to sidewalk.
Just, on that, if I could just jump in, Councillor Yanetsky, I thought that at one point in the latter part of last term, there was a request, and I believe it passed, asking that a review of our sidewalk policy be undertaken by the department and a report come back to council. So that doesn't seem to be consistent with that.
There may be a misunderstanding as to what's coming in April. The intent is for transportation services to bring forward a report that focuses on installation of sidewalk, but it will also talk about mitigation strategies for when sidewalk is installed in areas that people don't want them to be installed. In the end, it is council's decision whether or not to go forward and install a sidewalk. However, I wanted to clarify for you that we have 7 policies that support sidewalk that would need to be reviewed.
Okay. Councillor Yanetsky, you still have the floor.
Well, that's all new information to me from that Mr. Gross has pointed out. I wasn't aware of how many policies there were. From my discussions with Mr. Taggy, it appears straightforward that he needed just some direction to take a look at it again. So I'm trying to understand, Mr. Gross, is that you want direction from council now, or a decision from council when the report comes, the one in April that you were talking about, with Mr. Justin Ridman?
Mr. Wilmer, I think you want to jump in on this one.
I would suggest it's the latter. So Mr. Tiagi may not have been aware that council had already directed staff to come back and report in April. And so I think that what you'll find is that the work is already underway, and you should get what you're looking for in the April report. And if not, that can be one of the outcomes of the April report, is you can direct us to do further study, or I think that giving additional direction tonight will not be helpful to the process. Waiting for the April report will be.
Okay, but I think if maybe you can confer with Mr. Gross and Mr. Reedman and just make sure that they're in fact clear on what the intent of that April recommendation was, and go back to the minutes if need be.
Yes, thank you.
Well, then maybe I can just also touch base with staff afterwards, and just to get a clarification where it all stands, so we understand.
Yeah, perhaps Mr. Wilmer can send a note to all members of council and provide us with an update.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Etherington.
I think that covers the point I had, Mr. Chair. That was that my understanding was we were, after the Palmer-Kennedy fiasco in my ward, we were reviewing the overriding piece of legislation, which seemed to be the pedestrian charter. And I've always understood we're getting a report back on that pedestrian charter, but maybe we've covered that.
Yeah, and I think you are correct. That was the primary focus, as I recall it, of the conversations in the late summer, fall, was around the pedestrian charter. I think the additional information that Mr. Gross has provided us with this evening, that in fact, as they look at it, it's not just going to be the pedestrian charter. It's in fact 7 different pieces of policy that are consistent around this issue, and that's something that both council and staff are going to have to put their heads around in terms of dealing with this issue. Any other questions and answers? If not, first reading of the bylaws, and there is a late starter. Mr. Clerk.
Yes, through you, Mayor Urbanovic, there is one late starter bylaw, and it deals with the assumption of certain lands for use as a public highway.
Okay, and the bylaws have been moved by Councillor Ioannidis and seconded by Councillor Singh, and that leave be given to the mover and seconder to introduce them. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And if I can just ask you to click in, Councillor Marsh. Over to you. You're up.
Okay. So I'd like to ask for a mover for the second reading of the bylaws.
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Gazzola and seconded by Councillor Yanetsky. All those in favor? That's carried. All right. Then, okay, so we were able to get through most of the agenda items for the Committee of the Whole previously because we had delegations, but the only one that we have yet to cover is number 3 on page 2, the nominating committee appointments to Heritage Kitchener. So do we have a mover?
I'll move them.
Oh, sorry?
I moved them.
You moved them?
Yes.
You moved that they, okay.
Yeah, I moved the...
Great. And so is there any discussion on that item?
Okay, there's several people, so I'll help you out here. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I do have a concern with Grayson continuing. We've always tried to stay with the fact that if somebody has served more than the 6-year term, that we let them sit for a year and offer the position up for somebody else. So I would, my suggestion, or I guess it's not really a motion, but I'll be saying that I would prefer to have somebody else from the unassigned applicants to be moved into that at-large position. I think it's respectful of the process that we have done in the past. Grayson has done a great job on Heritage Kitchener for the 7 years that he did serve. I think it might be a good opportunity for some other people to step into that position. I did have a question regarding how many...
Just before you do, just for a clarification, point of information from staff on that, I believe that the term period is 8 years now, not 6 years?
8 years.
So, Ms. Tarling authored the report. Mr. Goodeve is able to respond to any questions, so I'll turn it to him to address questions from committee.
Through you, Mayor Urbanovic, yes, it has been changed to 8 years. Also, as part of the appointment policy, it does state that time served as an interim appointment would not count against the total. And Grayson was an interim appointment to Heritage Kitchener, which is why it's indicated as 7 years. So that additional 7th year shouldn't count against his total. So it should be considered as 6 years that he's served on as a full member of the committee.
Okay. It's a 2-year appointment, is that correct?
Through Mayor Urbanovic, yes, it is. The additional year was 1 year of an interim appointment. Yeah. And the policy states that would count against the overall when considering the time served on committee.
Yep, okay, I understand that. How many members do we have empty on the at-large portion of the membership for Heritage Kitchener?
Through Mayor Urbanovic, currently just one position is available for the at-large position. However, it is within council's purview if they do wish to over-appoint or appoint additional at-large members.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So Dave Councillor Schneider's your next one. Councillor Marsh?
I would like to move that since we don't have people placed in certain sectors like planner and conservator, that we do move some more names forward to serve as at-large members so that it's easier for quorum to be met and also just for more experience. And I don't know if now is the time to move names forward for that, but...
Sure.
I would like to move Marcus Drasdo and Denny Pellerin forward.
Okay. So is that that'll be an amendment to the motion? Right.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so we'll come back to that.
Thank you.
Next up is Councillor Gazzola for you.
Yeah, I would like to move Kerry Kirby to fill the St. Mary's Heritage Conservation District. And I'd also like to, there's some mix-up with Ms. Amanda Hukas, but from my understanding, as late as last night, she had always wanted to sit on the Heritage Committee, but there was some confusion, and because of that confusion, she withdrew. I would like to nominate her for that conservator position. She comes with a great deal of background in urban geography and has been very active in coming forward with the Heritage Landscaping Committee, and for that reason, I'd like to see her nominated for that position.
Are those the only 2 points?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to refer to the clerk. Regarding Amanda Hukias, do you have any clarification about exactly where she stands? Okay. So what I have here is an email dated this past Friday, January 23rd, and it's quite clear that Amanda has said that she does not want to serve on Heritage Kitchener for the coming term. And she's not sure how that might have been misinterpreted. So Amanda has now taken herself off of the list, and so we're going to not be able to consider her.
I find that really confusing. Having heard,
do you want to see it?
I trust your reading.
Okay.
I trust you to read.
All right.
I received a memo as late as last night from Mrs. Halboom, who is very active in these.
That's right, but she has not been in touch with Ms. Hukias directly. I'm saying her name wrong. Huikas? Help me out here.
Huikas, I think.
Huikas. So that's a moot point at this point. Okay, so moving on, regarding the other person moved forward, I'm going to refer again to the clerk regarding Mr. Kirby, because we had a motion about him when we did the striking committee. Can you help clarify?
Yes, through you, Chair Marsh. A motion to reconsider will be required to consider Mr. Kirby's appointment, as a motion came forward as part of the striking committee to have him appointed, and that motion was lost. All the actions that took place at the striking committee were ratified at Council's inaugural meeting, and therefore a motion to reconsider will be required to consider his appointment.
Okay, all right.
Can we not play games here, and can we deal with this without going through all the notice of reconsideration? Is there a way to do that?
Through you, Chair Marsh, the only way to do that would be to suspend the rules, which takes the same voting requirements as a motion to reconsider.
Okay, so what I suggest we do is when we come to that vote, that we look to see if we have a majority, even without this move to motion to reconsider, because and if we do, then we can go to that at that point. Okay.
Next up is Councillor Yanetsky for you.
I have a few comments to make regarding Amanda Huikas. It was my understanding that she wanted to be on, as also from late last night from emails with Mrs. Halboom as well, although I didn't have anything directly from her, Amanda Huikas herself. So I'm puzzled that that's the latest position, and that's different from the information I had heard, but c'est la vie, I guess. I also would like to have a member at large added to the list, and I'm recommending Terry Ross be included in this. I think he's been quite vocal over the last year in terms of representing his community. He may not have totally a lot of experience, but on the other hand, a person who is quite outspoken and contributes to the community, I think, would be an asset to the committee. Lastly, I want to speak with the item of Councillor Gazzola bringing forward Kerry Kirby. I'm really disappointed. This
Point
is-
of order.
Okay.
So I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I think from procedurally, and I turn to the clerk, if we're going to be dealing with the Mr. Kirby situation, I believe a motion to reconsider would have to happen first before we even discuss it.
Okay. So I want to just ask for a point of clarification. And we've had other motions ahead of that one, so should we not go through them in order of which they came up, or should we deal with that now?
Through your Chair Marsh, it is to the Chair's discretion.
It's up to me.
As to the order with which, but typically, yes, you would take them in the order with which they were presented in this case. So the amendments would be formally on the table. The way they have been presented, though, I wasn't sure if you'd actually formally accepted them as being formal motions at this point.
Okay, so the way, so what I have here then is a lot of people who wanted to put forward their questions or suggestions in this discussion, so I didn't want to have us go to voting on motions right away before we hear from everybody. So, in fact, what I'd like to do is go through in order, in the order that people have spoken, and then we can address individual names as needed later. Okay? Can you click?
Situation, and I appreciate.
Can you speak into your mic, please?
Sorry, I was just resting. I appreciate that you don't have access to the lit up screen over there, but I did want to make a general comment about everything we're talking about. So could I make that before we get into that discussion, or not?
Please, go ahead. The floor is yours.
I just wanted to say that the first part of this report, we've got an independent 5-member committee that nominates people, puts a lot of work into these nominations. I presume that they make those decisions, certainly make them independent of council, after a great deal of thought, I would hope. And I wonder about all of us getting involved in these decisions. And I'd like some clarification on staff as to what this situation is. I mean, this committee, they make these nominations, and are we free to take them apart?
Yes, so we can let staff answer that, but yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, the short answer is yes, you're free to do anything you want, although I would remind committee that I think it was Council's intent to retain an expert advisory committee so that you could rely on their expertise in the sector and their independent advice to form a slate before you. I know that based on feedback from the committee, if the slate is consistently revised, it will call into question the value that they provide to Council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Councillor Yanetsky, your time was interrupted. Did you have more that you'd like to share?
Well, I've already commented on my other items, but I just want to point out that we have 2 heritage districts that are unrepresented. We do have an applicant for one of them, and we can't talk about them.
We're going to get there.
You know, so it boggles the mind in terms of we're trying to do a process, and we're trying to make a recommendation, yet I can't talk about this person, yet we need to have representation of a district, which is a requirement.
Of course you can talk. We are going to get there, but we also want to follow due process.
Okay, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
I'll let you
Okay.
do that.
Thanks. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I can just speak to the motion then for a moment?
Yes.
I just want to, I think, echo the intent of the comments or the question that Councillor Etherington asked and the response we heard from Mr. Chapman. I think the previous council decided to amend our nominating committee process and to remove the role that staff played in it and to get a group of respected leaders of community organizations who would look at all of the applicants and in their best estimations, make solid recommendations to council that are non-political in nature. In other words, they would try to balance all of the things that are important for us in terms of the committees in question, and provide a list of recommendations of people that, based on the applicants, they feel are consistent with that. And I mean, you know, we're talking with people who are very community focused. I mean, this is the KW Community Foundation, Director of Philanthropic Services, the KW Multicultural Center Executive Director, the CEO of the United Way, the Executive Director of Capacity Waterloo Region, which I actually think is called Capacity Canada now, and the CEO of the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce. And so I would really caution council about us straying too much from their recommendations. We did that a little bit in the striking committee, and I would tend to agree with the comments made by Mr. Chapman that if we continually are straying from them, I think at some point we're going to, quite frankly, have them question the value that they provide to the organization and question their ongoing involvement. And I think that would really be a disappointment to me and a negative for the municipality. So I would ask council to seriously consider that before we start adding any additional names to the recommendation.
Okay. So are there other additional people who clicked in?
Just when I look at the slate of people on that nominating committee, I guess heritage is such a specific area. I'm a little bit concerned that the nominating committee may not have the expertise or the understanding of how critical it is to fulfill all of the specific areas. And I'm wondering if there should be some kind of discussion, or is there a discussion with the nominating committee regarding specific appointments to committees like Heritage Kitchener?
Well, with all due respect, I think that every single one of our committees has a specialized niche, not just heritage. And so we have to, we have entrusted the nomination process to these 5 very highly skilled, nuanced, these people who are on our nominating committee are extremely qualified, I would say, in being able to read, what to do for each committee. However, I can appreciate what you're saying, that certainly they wouldn't have background information about who each person is and what they might be able to offer to the table, other than what they put on their forms, right? And it's 1 page. It's very brief. So things can get missed. But we have trusted this nominating committee with all of our other committees, and so we're going to continue that until, we're going to continue that with today.
Okay, well, I think I respect the fact that other members have put some appointees forward. We've really struggled with Heritage to have quorum many, many, many times, and okay. Having a full slate of members, I think, is really critical to this committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Davey is asked to speak now.
Thank you. I'll just be very brief. I'm going to stick with the committee's recommendation. I just wanted to say to the chair that I'm thankful that the first time I chaired Committee of the Whole, it wasn't an issue like this. So good job.
Trial by fire. Okay, anybody else?
No, that's it.
Sorry. Okay. So let's go through. Actually, before we go to any amendments or voting on any amendments or motions, I'd like to just make a quick comment that having sat, I came to politics through a committee, a volunteer committee, and I'm very grateful that I'm now sitting here, and it's a very privileged position. And I did note that a lot of the individuals who have applied to this position also are very civically engaged, and many of them did put themselves out there in the last election, and are not privileged like us to sit at this table. So we need to at least note that in our decision, because I think anybody who shows such dedication and interest in becoming engaged civically should have a chance to do so at one point or another. And one other thing, rather than going through these one name at a time, one thing that we can do is just look at increasing the number of at-large members and be able to take more people rather than pick and choose which one's worthy. Sorry, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I just want to say something in favor of increasing the number of at-large individuals. I just want to make another point that I appreciate what committees do, these volunteer committees, and I think we listen to them the majority of the times, but there are times that we don't. It's not that we don't listen to them, but we have our preferences. And the final thing, the buck stops here. We are accountable. We are responsible. Any of those committees, they're worth everything, but the buck stops here. So I mean, that's something we have to keep. I have seen it over the years. Many recommendations come forward, and on many occasions, the recommendations are adjusted. So by doing a minor adjustment here, I don't think we're slapping anyone in the face. The other situation that I've always had a problem with is that on these committees, you can never have too many volunteers. I noticed I did not sit on this committee the last 4 years as a voting member, but I attended almost every meeting. And on many meetings, there was not quorum at the meetings. And so when we've got an opportunity that people have put their name forward, I think we should do everything we can to put as many people on the committee as possible. How do you turn away volunteers? And then somebody is going to say then, well, yeah, you get too many people, you don't get anything done. I don't think that is a problem that we would run into. From my experience, that's not been a problem. It's been a bigger problem that there is not quorum there.
Okay. Okay.
Are you cutting me out?
No. I thought you're done.
No. It's power of the button. I'll be done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just aware of time and the fact that, I hear your point loud and clear, and I agree. I want to ask Councillor Fernandez, back half hour ago when we started this discussion and you mentioned a name and you said, well, why not give someone else a chance? Are you still wanting to make that a motion, or are you okay with if we go to the second idea, which was adding people instead of removing them? Can you click her in, please?
Yep, go ahead.
Mayor?
No, now that I have the clarification, I'm fine with leaving Grayson, but I would support adding names.
Okay,
to this.
thank you. Okay, so Councillor Schneider, would you like to make a motion to amend this motion to add Marcus Drasdo and Denis Pellerin?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Do we vote on that first?
So,
Discussion.
I would look to the clerk. My suggestion to you would be that perhaps you deal with the core group first, then the idea of adding the two or three additional people that have been mentioned.
Okay.
And then thirdly, look if there's a desire to motion to reconsider about Mr. Kirby.
So, great. So do we have a motion to accept the recommendation of the appointments by the nominating
I had moved
committee?
that previously.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
We have a motion on the table. So are we ready for a vote? All those in favor? That's carried. All right. So in addition now, we have a motion to add, because we have spots that are not filled, we have a motion to add Marcus Drasdo and Denis Pellerin to the list of people on the Heritage Committee. And Terry Ross, those three individuals. Discussion? Is anybody interested in discussion?
Mr. Schneider has his...
Should they be dealt with individually?
At
As
this
opposed
point,
to a
no.
group?
At this point, no. But yeah. You prefer individual?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a thought. It may be better to take a motion on the number of people people want, because right now we have 3, and some may think 1's okay, some may think 2's okay, some may think 3's okay. So maybe it's dealing with the number of people we add to. I don't know if that's a will. And then we have our voting cards that even if all 3 of these people are on there, we know how many to vote for out of the 3. So I don't know if that's a good way of trying to get to an end result, but it's just a thought.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Get a click.
Oh, yeah. Just looking at Councillor Schneider, when you put those 2 names forward, were you saying that it should be only increased by 2, or are you open for...
Well, I'm open for more, but those are the 2 names that I put forward.
Okay, I think it should be a cautious step forward. We are changing the term of reference. I would move that we limit it to 2 names, but I can look to see others, but that would be my motion.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to add only 2 more names, and seconded by Councillor Gazzola. So we're going to vote just on that. All those in favor? Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So it was 5-5 plus me.
The chair gets to pick, right? The chair is to get the big bucks.
Okay, so I actually think that we can increase it by 3. I think that so I'm going to I'm not going to support that motion. So, but I can't make a motion as chair.
Yeah, then I would put the motion forward that we increase by 3.
Okay. Seconded. Do we have a seconder? Okay. All those in favor? 5. That, and all those opposed? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that is not carried.
Councillor Davey?
I'll move that we add 1.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Okay. Sorry, can we... I'd like to revert back to the previous motion to have at least... No, we can't do that. Can't do that. Okay.
Excuse me, point of order.
So you got to talk to Councillor Marsh. You can click in. Go ahead, Councillor Gazzola.
When we had a vote, it was 5-5. When we had the vote, it was 5-5. Wouldn't the chair get the opportunity to break that vote?
She did. She voted against it.
I did. I voted against 2, and because I wanted 3, but now 3 got lost. So now I want 2, but it's too late.
How about half? Half of what?
Clarification from the clerk. Can we go back to putting forth the motion again to have adding just 2?
Through Chair Marsh, it would require a motion to reconsider the vote that was previously taken. Yes.
Okay. So do we have a motion to reconsider the vote?
Point of order. Sorry, I'm
Go
not
ahead.
trying to make your life difficult. You have a motion on the floor of one that was seconded, so I think you need to deal with that
Thank you.
first.
All those in favor of adding only one additional member to Heritage Kitchener? All those in favor? All those opposed? That was defeated. Okay, do we have a motion to rescind the addition of 2 members to Heritage Kitchener? To reconsider.
Councillor Fernandez?
I'll put the motion to reconsider 2 members being added to the Heritage Kitchener.
Okay. Seconder? Okay, all those in favor to reconsider 2 members?
How big a majority would we need?
2/3.
8 people, 8 votes.
Okay, all those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay. All right. So, you know what? We can do this in a different way because we tried to decide on how many members before we decide on who to bring in. Go ahead.
All the options have been killed. There's no more debate or anything. We need to. It's already been voted on. It's done. Unless you had 4.
So, no, the appointments that have happened, that have been approved, are the committee's recommendations. If I can help you out, Councillor Marsh.
Please do.
And that's been approved. Council has attempted to add 1 additional person, 2 additional people, and 3 additional people, and there was no consensus under any of those options. So those motions have been ruled off the table at this point in time. But the existing 4 people that were originally recommended have been approved. So there's still the Kerry Kirby issue if you want to entertain that.
So if we had, if we've only voted on whether we could add 1 or 2 or 3 members, we haven't voted on whether or not we could add specific individuals. And so just a point of clarification, we voted on a number, but we haven't voted on individuals. Can we not do it that way?
Well, she's the chair. Turn on your microphone.
My apologies. Sorry. We've already gone through 1, we've already gone through 2, we've already gone through 3. So specifically, the committee has already stated that 1, 2, 3 new members cannot be added to the Heritage Kitchener. So unless someone is willing to move 4, which I doubt, I think that call to question if more members can be added is completed.
Okay.
You have 2 additional speakers, Councillor Fernandez.
So my question is, there are members added on that are sector specific. So the building industry, and I'm asking the clerk, still has a vacancy. Is that correct?
Through your Chair Marsh, no, the building vacancy has been filled when the motion that was moved by Mayor Verbanovic was passed.
Okay. And the only ones that remain empty without any representation are the St. Mary's Heritage District and the Upper Dune Heritage District. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair Marsh. The other ones are the planner and conservator positions are also vacant at this time.
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Gazzola is also asked to speak.
Go
Councillor
ahead.
Marsh.
Yeah, I would like to deal with the issue of the vote, having the vote again on Mr. Kirby. And I understand I need to have 8 out of the people here. I would just like to speak to it, if I could, for a moment.
Point of order. I think you have to have agreement to reconsider before you can listen to debate about whether or not there should be a vote.
I'm going to try to convince you to reconsider what I have to say.
It's up to you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead. Can you speak into your microphone, please?
You can let me speak? Yeah. I would like if council could set everything else aside and support the motion of reconsideration for Mr. Kirby. Mr. Kirby does represent a heritage district, the St. Mary's Heritage Conservation District. He is there also by virtue of the neighborhood. He is their appointed representative. I don't believe that there's been a formal meeting to that effect, but he has served that area well, and he continues to have the support of the neighborhood. We do have an opening there, and I would like to see it filled by him, because he has tremendous experience in heritage issues. I know some issues arose in the last term, and he became very frustrated with what was going on, and because of that, I think he's been misjudged somewhat. I'd like to set that aside and to add further that myself and Councillor Yanetsky are the 2 members of council on the Heritage Committee, and we're both prepared to work with Mr. Kirby. So I would ask that this council give him an opportunity to again serve his neighborhood. Now he had been on the committee for a number of years. He sat out the
I'm
committee.
going to ask you to keep your comments brief if you want to wrap it up.
Please support my reconsideration. Thank you.
Councillor Yanetsky is also asked to speak. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, I too echo Councillor Gazzola's comments. Reconsideration is required to be considered here. Unfortunately, that's just the process that we're stuck with, and we have a person who has been selected by the St. Mary's district. Nobody else wants to do it. They like him and they want him to be the rep. Of all the people here on our list on this sheet, he's the most qualified, most experienced, and the one that should be there. Sure, he's maybe been outspoken, but that's exactly the type of person we need on there.
Okay.
And I think the reconsideration should be supported.
Okay, so thank you to both Councillor Gazzola and Councillor Yanetsky for your appeals. Now it's time for us to vote. The motion is on the table is to reconsider a previous motion that was lost, and so all those in favor of
ask a recorded vote, please.
A recorded vote has been called. All those in favor of reconsidering the motion, please vote. All those in favor? And all those opposed? The motion has been, the motion is not carried. So
now you move that the committee rise and report.
Yes, but before we do that, I just want to make a note that, first of all, I think that council very much appreciates all that the nomination committee has done for us, but at the same time, we are still left with 4 vacancies on this on Heritage Kitchener, and I think it's a shame that we got stuck in. And I take full responsibility for not, being as familiar with the process as I could be. But I think it's a shame that we were unable to come to a way of adding more people to this committee. And I'd like to see us in the future find a way to readdress it. Do I have? Yeah. So sorry, I have a motion to rise.
And report.
And report.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Opposed? That's carried. And then you have your cheat sheet to read.
I do. Okay, so it has been moved that the proceedings in the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
And you're having that seconded by?
Seconded by Councillor Fernandez.
Okay. So we can just ask her to sign the form. That'd be great. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Singh, that the bylaws listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time, be finally passed and numbered serially by the clerk. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Davey that we now adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, everybody.